again. However, we shall look at the details into that when we get to business. Back to you, Ken.
All right, Dan. And over the weekend, there were concerns that perhaps M-Pesa was off. Is it true there was an outage because of the transfer of the system?
No, there has been a fraud that's been making rounds, and the one which is a very long one, talking about the whole day you'll not be able to access some services. This was in 2015 when Safaricom was bringing back their systems to Kenya from Germany.
Okay.
So it has been forwarded the same, but now there was a story we had done, and we can do this the graphic later on just to show the days that are meant to be affected. But in mid-July, the next outage is meant to be in mid-July for about 12 hours, which they've not said a specific date to.
All right, so it was no cause for alarm. Thank you very much, Dan Mwangi, with all the business. We'll be speaking to him in the next hour or so. Time now for some sports, and Brian Otwali is also in studio. Brian?
Well, thank you, Ken. A lot in sports today. We start our main focus in the World Under-18, that is the IAAF World Under-18 Championships. Team Kenya arrived at the Athletes Village at the Kenyatta University yesterday, and then today we are expecting the government, that is, to hand over all the facilities to IAAF. Remember that the tartan track at the warm-up area in Kasarani, as well as the main stadium, is already fitted, marked, and all the systems put in place, except the small tidbits on the fittings and fixing that is remaining on all the facilities that will be used come Wednesday. We expect that the IAAF President Sebastian Coe, as well as the President Uhuru Kenyatta, to go open the ceremony on Wednesday ahead of the games that will go ahead for 5 days.
Right, for all the sports, join Brian later on, perhaps in the next 1 hour and a half or so. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Dan Mwangi. Time now to begin right here, where we take you to the Hilton Hotel, where preparations for a crucial meeting between the IEBC and presidential candidates is underway. The much anticipated meeting is expected to begin this afternoon at 2 p.m. We now link up with Andrew Cheng to tell us about the preparations. And Andrew Cheng, good morning. Good to see you from Hilton. What do we expect? How many candidates or their representatives have confirmed attendance in this meeting?
Well, thank you, Ken Mijungu, there in the studio. We understand the meeting was actually supposed to begin at around 11 o'clock, but it was moved to 2 p.m. And we understand that was made probably because one of the presidential candidates, that is NASA's Raila Odinga, fell ill yesterday, and he had promised to be here at this meeting. So the rescheduling of that meeting to 2 o'clock was probably to give him more time to recuperate and to be able to turn up for that meeting. So that is what that is why we understand it has been moved to 2 o'clock earlier from 11 o'clock, which had been announced earlier. This time, we understand that the meeting will be open to the media. Remember, the previous one, which was held at a different hotel, was a closed-door meeting, and when the aspirants and the candidates came out, everyone was speaking a different tune. Some of them said that they had agreed that the ballot tender would not be awarded to Al Ghurair, and others had a different opinion. Remember, Jubilee came with a different opinion, and Akuru Court and NASA also had a different opinion, a different agreement of what had occurred during the meeting. So this time also, we understand that the meeting will be open to the media, and we will be probably beaming live everything that will be happening during the meeting and what the candidates and their agents will be saying. We still do not know whether the Jubilee presidential candidate, that is the President Uhuru Kenyatta, will be here, but the main opposition alliance, that is NASA, we understand will be here 2 o'clock for that meeting. One of the main point really has been how to go forward from here, given the High Court ruling. The High Court judges said that there should be public participation, and IEBC has just been really cracking its head. How do you conduct public participation on a tendering process? So that is really the conundrum. And yesterday, having spoken to a few people and having gone back to what happened and the initial, remember, this tender wars has been there for quite some time. So yesterday, we've compiled this story, and probably you need to take a look at it first.
The High Court ruling on ballot papers was the second time in less than a month that the IEBC has lost a case in the court to the opposition in the run-up to the general election. On June 23rd, the Commission lost their appeal, in which they had wanted the chairman of the IEBC to be able to verify and alter results of the presidential election announced by the constituency returning officer. The ballot printing tender, however, is more complicated, as there are only 29 days to the elections. And it is not the first time there is a fight over the tender. When the Commission decided to use single sourcing, it was because the providers were squabbling over it.
in Kenya, when you have a tender which is more than 1 billion, there are those people who must fight over it. And when they fight, they don't care about the Kenyan people. They only care about the money. They don't care about you and me.
But now it's political, with several presidential candidates themselves opposing it. What next then for the IEBC? After the court found that there had been no public participation in the current one, it has called for public input.
The Commission shall invite the public to submit memoranda on procurement of presidential ballot papers to reach us by 11th of July 2017 by 5 p.m. And this will be followed by public hearings on the 12th of July 2017.
NTV has learned that while the Commission may still go with direct procurement for the printing of the presidential ballot papers, the public participation aspect may be exercised by the Commission getting input from Kenyans and the candidates on the criteria to be used to pick the company that will handle the task.
They are appealing to ensure that the framework for public participation is set out as expected. Because there's no legislation at the moment, as you know. There's no policy which has been set by the Public Procurement Authority. But that needs to be put in place so that we are all on the same page.
Well, so there you have it. That is what happened yesterday, and just giving a highlight of the procedures that have taken place to take us where we are now. So probably after the meeting with the presidential candidates is when the IEBC will have a clear direction going forward. Remember, it probably did not take into consideration some of the opponents of the award of the tender to Al Ghurair initially, and that is what led to the case in court and brought us to this point, in fact, where we are now. Remember, one of the issues also is that the ballot papers for the other 5 seats have already been printed, so it's now only the presidential candidates for the presidential election, the ballot papers that is remaining, and we will get a way forward today from the IEBC and from the presidential candidates themselves how they want the public participation to be conducted, and whether they want a different company to print the ballot papers for the presidential candidates, remembering that NASA is totally against the award of the tender to Al Ghurair company, which has already printed the 5 other ballot papers for the 5 other seats available. Ken?
Right, Andrew Cheng, very interesting indeed. And in studio, I have Gabriel and I have Eric Komolo. They'll be speaking to us about that. And one of the things that we are looking out for is the possibility that indeed there can be some consensus built so that the stakeholders can agree that in spite of the challenges, they can still award it to Al Ghurair, because the High Court fell short of declaring that as an impossibility. But indeed, as it stands, they can actually award it back to Al Ghurair. We'll be linking back with Andrew Cheng a little bit later on. But let's go to Mombasa, where Peter Mwangangi is standing by. And Peter, good morning. Good to see you. We spoke last night right here on NTV. And one of the concerns before we speak about the security status of Lamu and the coast in general and what's happening between the 2 top contenders of the gubernatorial seat. Let's talk about Raila Odinga, and it's something that Kenyans really want to know. Is he out of Mombasa now headed to Nairobi for this crucial meeting in the afternoon, or what are you learning about his health status?
Well, Ken, Raila was discharged yesterday from Mombasa Hospital at about 10:45 p.m. and he had a moment to speak to journalists, and he said that it was just a matter of some stomach pains, but they had been sorted out by that time, and that he was as fit as a fiddle and that he was healthy. So that is as per last night, 10:45 p.m. and after that the entourage left immediately to the airport, and we understand that he is already in Nairobi as we speak. So from this side we saw that he is okay, his health, there's nothing to worry about according to what we heard from the doctors and from Raila Odinga himself.
With that out of the way, Mwangangi, let's speak about security. Fresh attacks in Lamu. What are you learning about this?
Yes, we are hearing of reports in Gatundu area, that is in Witu ward. Remember that that area is about 25 kilometers from Witu town along the Garsen Witu Mokowe area, but this particular area is near the border of Lamu County and Tana River County. It's far-flung. Getting information from that particular side has been quite a difficult task because of communication issues, network issues, but we understand that later on in the day we'll be getting the full picture from not just the locals but also from the officers who are leading the Operation Linda Boni. But Ken, what we know so far is that starting yesterday, the officers have started implementing a curfew that was imposed in 16 areas, that is in Lamu County itself, Tana River as well as Garissa counties. Those areas are Hulugo, Galmagala, Sangailu, Bodehei, Milimani, Baure, Ijara, Hola, Garsen, Kipini, Kiunga and Ishakani, among other areas. I must point out though that there is no curfew in Lamu Island as well as Manda Island, which actually has the Manda airport. So nobody who plans to fly to Lamu should be worried about anything. So that is what we are learning right now. And of course, the curfew means that everybody in those areas that have been mentioned should be indoors starting from 6:30 p.m. and stay indoors all the way up to 6:30 a.m. Of course, this curfew will go on for a period of 90 days. That is subject to extension or rather even being cut short as the government deems fit to do so. But yesterday, officials from the Kenya Red Cross started accessing some of those areas that have been attacked, including Pandanguo, and we had prepared a report concerning the situation. Let us have a look at that.
This man survived death by a whisker. He says the attackers who came to his village in Jima, Lamu County, bound several of them and started hacking them.
Wakakata hii area hii. Wakafikiri nimekufa lakini mimi nilikuwa sijakufa, nilitulia tu ile kiroho mbaya. Damu inanimwagika lakini kavumilia hivyo hivyo. Kwa sababu wale nisione kama bado wasinione nikiwa hai wakanimalizia kabisa. Sasa walipomalizia kuua wale watu wawili pale, hao wakatoka wakashika njia kwenda na huko mjini huko Pandanguo.
He got up and decided to seek medical attention, but got lost due to the bad weather and the roads.
Kapotea tulifika poromoko saa 1 kasoro ya asubuhi. Na tulitoka kule saa 7
The residents of Jima say the group of men was targeting people they considered outsiders and not of their religion. Jima village is about 2 kilometers from Pandanguo, where the militants attacked a police station and killed 3 police officers earlier last week. The acting Interior Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, has now declared a curfew in Lamu as well as Tana River and Garissa for the next 3 months. The dusk to dawn order is meant to tame further attacks in the areas. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Well, that is a feel of how the situation looks on the ground. We have an update. We had an update from James Ole Serian, who is the leader, or rather the head of the Operation Linda Boni, and he said that the statement reads in part that the operation to flush out persons who attacked Pandanguo is going on well. We have deployed more troops and are aggressively pursuing the attackers, and we are hoping to get them soon. And he also said that they have started implementing the curfew. So that is what we know so far, Ken, from Lamu, and of course we are keeping our eye on the ground, and we will be bringing you every update that we get from that particular area. For now, back to you, Ken.
All right, Peter Mwangangi, thank you. And before I let you go, one more question. Pertinent story out of the coast is that perceived fight between the 2 leading contenders of the gubernatorial seat, that is Sarai and Joho. Tell us more. What are you learning? Has it simmered? Any update from the security in terms of what they're trying to do to contain this?
If I got you well, in as far as campaigns are ongoing, everybody has been doing their own campaigns in their own areas. For example, yesterday when Joho, the governor, was with the NASA principals in Kilifi County, Hassan Omar was conducting his own campaigns in Changamwe area, that is in Chaani, and but of course they later met, we understand, at Mombasa Hospital, where Raila Odinga was hospitalized for about 3 hours, and we are waiting to see how that plays out. It's just about 29 days to the election, and we are keeping an eye on that and to see how the different camps will be campaigning in terms of drumming up support ahead of that poll.
All right, thank you, Peter Mwangangi. We'll speak to you later on any development from the coast. And now, ahead of the talks, now the Jubilee Party is accusing the judiciary of conspiring to favor the opposition by meeting all of its demands in a scathing attack started off by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Jubilee leaders say that they will not accept the change of date of the coming general election.
The president and his deputy expressed concern with the court's cancellation of the printing of presidential ballot papers, while warning that such delay tactics by the opposition will not work, and neither will the election be postponed under any circumstance.
I am telling the nation, every single individual in Kenya, including the judges, including the IEBC and the opposition, there is nobody who has not been aware that the election shall be on the 8th of August 2017. And I am saying, Kenyans are ready for that date. You change and mess with that date, we will not accept you denying the people of Kenya their constitutional rights to elect their leaders. Mambo ya nusu mkate hakuna. Mambo ya nusu mkate hakuna. We will not accept the kind of games we are seeing being played by the people who are not ready for elections on the 8th of August.
Here, the duo that is seeking re-election into the most powerful office in the country picked issues with IEBC.
Sisi tunaambia IEBC, the IEBC sio commission ya Raila, sio commission ya NASA. Tunataka kuambia wangwana wa IEBC ya kwamba wasicheze karata mbaya na mambo ya uchaguzi. We are not going to entertain any monkey business between the IEBC and our competitors. And I want to tell Chebukati na ule CEO wake Chiloba, sisi kama Jubilee ukituona tumenyamaza, si kwamba hatutumia akili. It is 1 month down the line. IEBC haijatuonyesha kwamba wako tayari kuweka miguu yao chini na kuhakikisha kwamba wametufanyia elections which is free and fair.
At every stop they made, the narrative would be the same. Matters the coming general election. The courts were not spared their wrath by the president and his deputy.
Mimi nataka niwaambie wenye koti, tumewaheshimu, lakini msifikirie heshima ni uoga. Sababu mimi sasa naanza kuchokeshwa na watu wengine, na ni labda wanaona ya kwamba tunawaogopa. Mimi siogopi mtu. Is Justice Maraga ready for elections on the 8th of August, or is part of the games now being played by the characters in opposition who don't want an election on the 8th of August? I want to tell Justice Maranga, he has to make a decision if he wants to run the country as the president of Kenya. Akuja ombe kura. He should not run the functions of the president or executive from the bench of judiciary.
The Jubilee campaigns today were in several towns of Baringo, including Kabartonjo, Chomolingot, Marigat, Kabarnet, Muchongoe, and Eldama Ravine. Although it was largely expected that the president and his deputy would use their one-day tour in Baringo to campaign for the Jubilee Party, and by extension all those politicians vying for different seats under the Jubilee Party, the DP and president seemed to read a totally different script from what the residents here expected, and chose on this day to stick their agenda to matters IEBC and the judiciary. Lois Wangoi, NTV, Kabarnet in the county of Baringo.
All right, Lois Wangoi reporting from Baringo. That's where President Uhuru Kenyatta and the whole Jubilee campaign team were yesterday. Very pertinent issues raised by the president and supported by several of the Jubilee leaders there. That's the topic of discussion this morning. And I'm joined in studio by Professor Eric Komolo, who is an advocate of the High Court, and he's also an aspirant to Rangwe constituency. And Gabriel Muduma, I say, you know, we should give you a permanent seat here.
You should. I demand that.
You demand a permanent seat right here. Thank you very much for coming.
From August, you give me a permanent seat.
Sit here. Oh, from August, you also want to come here permanently.
After I win my election.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's start from there, Komolo. Yes. The change of the date, is it acceptable? You have done a lot of groundwork, for example, in Rangwe, and then suddenly you hear this rhetoric about a possibility that the date must change. From an advocate's perspective, is this cast in stone owing to the fact that it's in the Constitution, or there is even a possibility that the election date can change?
Well, it's possible to change the election date. Let's start from there.
Under what circumstances?
Specific circumstances. Okay. One of the candidates passes on.
Okay.
Where we've reached is the only scenario where the elections might be changed.
Days
but certainly not because of a tender.
Okay.
Particularly because if you look at the judgment that came out, I think on Friday, it's very clear that a substantial chunk of the tender process is continuing. So the issue here is presidential election ballot papers, and everyone who's looked at this thing, the dispute for over, I think, 4 or 5 months now, and should be able to appreciate that the right way is for the parties to negotiate.
And that's what they're doing this afternoon.
I commend IEBC for that. That's what they ought to have done, because this is a question of confidence building.
But you're commending them for that, and you're forgetting they're also saying they're appealing this week. So which is which? Appeals,
if I looked at their statement, was it on Saturday? It seems to be that they were coming down to realize that, you know, they have to negotiate. And remember, they are meeting all the presidential candidates or their representatives today. It will be, of course, in bad taste for them to meet them this morning and then file an appeal tomorrow.
Okay.
It's in everyone's interest and in public interest, for this matter, to be settled through some level of negotiations.
Okay.
Partly because the cost of election is very expensive. You don't want to put the country in this cycle of campaigns and hatred and intimidation for another 6 months, just because of presidential ballot papers that ought to be negotiated. And so IEBC owes us a duty to be a little bit more transparent with the tendering process, to consult satisfactorily, and if it means they award it to another party that is probably neutral to all the presidential candidates, the better for the country. As parliamentary aspirant, candidate, and of course for other positions, it's clear that the ballot papers are being printed now, so we do not seem to have a major dispute there.
Okay. Yes. All right, I'll come back to you, because your ballot papers are less important as compared to the
very important.
No, they're less important because there's no negotiations about them. But Gabriel, tell me, what do you think? I mean, the IBC, this is back and forth over the ballot papers, you know?
Thank you. Well, I wouldn't go much into the judgment, but probably what I read, why IEBC will be going back to court, to me, it's more like they are seeking an interpretation. Going by what the chairman, Chebukati, said, he said, you know, we do not have what you call a policy framework or the legislation of what you would tell us, you know, what it means to understand the narrative of public participation. It is not covered. They don't even have guidelines on the Public Procurement Act. They don't know where they are going to, you know, to get this narrative from the court or from the procurement authority. So I feel sorry for IEBC at this point, mainly because probably this is an exercise that they should have conducted earlier, and probably they failed to do that, but not because of their own doing. It's because it's not covered. And I think where he finds himself to be is that I don't know the kind of legal advantage that he has at IEBC, but there seems to be a loophole that continues to provide or present itself, that whatever they do, somebody runs to court. And for the prayers to be heard, now you have the court saying that you must go through what you call public participation. Yes. He did not understand what it was. And that's why probably they are heading back to court. He said it himself. He said he did not have legislation over it, not a policy framework. So I think the court may go out there and tell, you know, I mean, Justice Maraga was also on record saying that in public participation, we don't expect you to talk to the entire nation. We don't expect you to involve, you know, everyone. So really, it's actually a very murky situation. And by the way, I've been just asking myself, coming today, what if somebody will go, like our good Mheshimiwa, he'll go and say, I was not even involved in the exercise that you people are talking about. Could it hold a stay? Probably it could. So it's a murky situation.
That was the point, one of the points, the winning points for Third Way Alliance.
Exactly.
They were never consulted.
Exactly.
I'll take you through the press release again last week on Saturday. On Saturday. The first thing, hold a meeting with all presidential candidates today at 11:30 going onwards. Now it's 2 p.m. Invite the public to submit memoranda on the procurement of presidential ballot papers on 11th, that is tomorrow. Public hearing on 12th, that's on Wednesday. Then the third one is appeal the High Court decision on public participation in the procurement process.
And you know, that is actually more funnier. The reason I'm saying this, I mean, look at it this way. We are talking about public participation, which again is not captured in the Procurement Act. Are you telling me that IEBC must take to heart?
It doesn't have to be captured.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be captured in the Constitution. I mean, in the public procurement.
Yes.
It doesn't have to. Yes. But the Constitution is expressed on matters that touch on public. The whole things that touch on.
I think the public participation, more than anything, is just about goodwill. And that's what I read. Because at the end of the day, IEBC are controlled by the law. There is the issue of open procurement. Direct procurement. It's in their constitution. So they can choose both. Even after public participation, they can still choose.
Nothing stops these people, Komolo, from awarding the same tender to Al Ghurair. Nothing stops them, absolutely.
Stops them, and I slightly disagree with my brother here when you come to defining what public participation is.
Yes.
It's very clear when it comes to elections in Rangwe, it's very clear who the candidates are, who their representatives are. When it comes to presidential elections, it's very clear who the candidates are, and therefore who the stakeholders are, who need to be consulted, because I cannot then participate in an election in Rangwe if I'm not very sure that the processes and the staff involved are neutral. So really the question, as I said earlier, is basically a question of confidence building. It's basically a question, of course we do understand the dynamics of it's called Al Ghurair, the dynamics and concerns that probably there's a bit of conflict of interest here and there.
Which the court ruled out.
No, but it's very crucial when you look at the broader question of public interest involved in the presidential election. So if there's perception of biasness or potential biasness on the part of Al Ghurair, then a logical public participation will conclude that they are not neutral enough to print the ballot papers. So let's wait and see what will be the outcome of consultations today. But it's important to note that whatever they discuss, IEBC must be careful not to then appeal on abstract points like public participation. Because what any form of appeal will do is to delay the process, to take it back to court. Yet, as I said elsewhere, you cannot successfully solve political questions using judicial means.
Okay, you need to sit and negotiate about all these things.
You need to sit, you need to talk. You know, you have just seen the president trying to suggest that the judiciary could be having some, conflict of interest here, siding with one party or the other. Granted, that could be the case. But if you look at it broadly, a person of the stature of the president should not then be able to intimidate an institution or appear to intimidate an institution.
I'll talk about that because there are people, there's a completely different set of people who think that is not intimidation, it's concern. But now, the fact that it's coming from the president, it looks as though it's giving directives to an independent agency of the government.
That's right.
We'll talk about that. But on public participation, because I'd like to exhaust this on public participation, what is the level of participation? For example, can we break this down, for example, to the constituency level? For example, during the party primaries, for example, there was concerned that even in the selection of returning officers who were supposed to do them, the other candidates were not consulted. Remember the accusation that Anyang' Nyong'o left with some when he went somewhere, and then you see, went to Nyaka. You have been on the ground. He's not a politician per se. But tell us, what is the level, for example, and for if the things that you want to do, how do you then say that there was adequate participation? For example, break it down to the ground so that we understand the level of participation.
Before I do that, I think we need to differentiate between expectations when it comes to involvement or participation in political party primaries and institutions of the state that are well-resourced like IEBC.
Okay.
In terms of an institution like IEBC, you expect a level of engagement from day one. You expect them to outline their processes and involve stakeholders from day one.
And they have been doing it.
To some extent, they have been doing it.
Yes.
To some extent, I'm not, at least in theory, they have been doing it.
In theory, we see these people all the time.
In substance, you need to be seen to be neutral while doing it.
Okay.
You need to be seen to be trying as much as possible to go for a neutral party. Because this thing, at the end of the day, also involves a lot of public money. I think it's about 2.5 billion or something like that.
Yeah, the contract, the project
and if you nullify this contract, then there's a possibility that Al Ghurair will go to the international arbitration, which will expose us to a lot of expenses.
Yes, and they will win.
And of course, the Al Ghurair will likely win.
They've been given, is it called credit note? What is it?
Yes, the credit note, I think.
In fact, we've already paid half.
So the biggest question here is whether IEBC has a right to then expose the public to that kind of bill. And this can be avoided when they engage the parties in a very, very transparent way. Remember, Al Ghurair is not just any other entity. They have a history of involvement with IEBC and certainly with elections.
And they've done all the by-elections.
Yes. So they could be having the capacity, but do they exhibit the neutrality? I think that is what you the
concern there.
Yes, that's the concern, and that's what you need to engage with.
Gabriel, this neutrality that Prof is talking about here is basically because there's an allegation that the president is a friend of Al-Said, the owner of Al Ghurair, Al Ghurair Group. That is the only reason.
No, number one, that's speculation of the highest order.
But it's not speculation.
Just because somebody visits the State House does not mean he's a friend of the president.
No. Gabriel, if tomorrow... No, wait.
Okay.
If you come to my house last night...
Right.
Yes, and we had dinner last night.
Yes.
And today I'm hosting you in the show. Yes. People will obviously say that these guys have a personal relationship.
Now you see...
I invited him for dinner to get with other friends.
It's interpretation. We have seen so many president and world leaders and business leaders come to the State House. They've been actually, a red carpet has been extended to them. But that does not necessarily mean, you see, where the problem is, this is the president and also the party leader. And by virtue of that, you would interpret these guys are friends. But you see, it was not only the president alone. His family was actually brought into this whole matter.
Yes, I remember that.
Coming back to the issue of public participation, because I'm liking the fact that you want actually to exhaust it, and I would also want to learn. And where IBC is coming from, that's why I'm understanding them. They say, for us to avoid somebody running back to court, please help us understand what you mean
by public participation,
so that we do not have somebody again run into court and say we did not involve. Exactly. Okay. So to them, probably they could understand. And you remember Justice Maraga actually preempted this, saying you do not have to involve the whole country. You do not have blah, blah, blah. I think he said some rules, but IBC still doesn't understand, because they say, according to what we have legally, is that we are an independent body. The fact that, yes, there are people running to court, we must heed to the court summons, and we must heed also to the court decisions.
Okay.
But that said and done, we still have a law and legislation and policy to follow. What among these have we done wrong? Public participation was not one of them. And that's why I agree with Prof when he says there is an element probably of bringing up credibility. Could be it. But if public participation suffices, is that the last we see? I put it to you, that would not be what we see. Because even if you look at the statements in Mombasa, and I was just talking to somebody there and I said, if the Chief Justice would have known, I mean, like they say, hindsight is 20/20. If I would have known, these utterances would have brought these issues, I wouldn't have uttered them. Because what people are arguing is, and probably that's what the president is saying, he's not actually attacking the CJ.
We played the bite yesterday.
Yeah,
listen to him very well. The sound bite from the CJ.
He is saying he does not want his court, the Chief Justice now, he's expressing it to him, please don't allow your courts to be used by people who want to stagnate and ensure that the elections are not held on August 8th.
as I ask my director to find the bite of the CJ speaking, and we'll listen to what he says, I'd like to go to Komolo, and my question is, the first time this tender was nullified was at the High Court.
Yes.
The second time, and the High Court was basically, there was no system in place, the commissioners were not there. Then we go to the process, and that's at PPOA, where it was again nullified. And the third time now is at the High Court again. Never, during these two occasions, did we ever tout issue of public participation.
Well, I think it was no. I think it was a hidden aspect of the.
I think they're digging. Yes. I think they're fishing for reasons.
Not at all. Not at all. If you look at it from the perspective, the original one, that the commissioners were not in and all that. That simply means that the process could not have been as inclusive as possible. If you look at the second stage about public,
but it was expressed, Wakili. It was expressed in that for you to make such a decision with such a magnitude, the secretariat led by Chiloba cannot sit and make that decision.
That's right.
It was expressed. But in spite of that, they decided to go ahead.
Oh, well, I mean, that then goes back to the interest IEBC has in particularly awarding this Al Ghurair
and it was
entity.
Canvassed in court.
And you know, the way they insist on it obviously then raises speculation that there could be something fishy about it. Their point, of course, is that the time is short. We need to have this going. The elections are just a couple of days away. But that does not satisfy. Okay, this country has a history. As a history of manipulation, a history of corruption and all this. So that doesn't satisfy all the involved parties. And I'm telling you as a candidate, this thing is resource intensive. The last thing you want is for somebody sitting somewhere in a secretariat to try to manipulate the process from day one, or appear to manipulate, because I'm not suggesting they're manipulating. But if they don't involve, and they insist on this Al Ghurair thing, and they know how presidential elections in particular have brought turmoil in this country, then surely
just careful.
Surely.
The more, I agree with what somebody said, the more things change, the more they remain the same. I heard over the weekend, and it's not only over the weekend, I think a presidential candidate who's actually in this election, I heard him say that this election should be done by the United Nations. You remember that?
Should start by printing the ballot. United Nations.
Exactly. If we were to go that way, and probably that's why I say a lot of information but very little knowledge, they didn't know that Al Ghurair is a preferred vendor of the United Nations and the World Bank. But you see, the other thing that nobody is bringing in, and I'm yet to hear this, is Al Ghurair have failed in one way or the other, whether it's capacity or whether it's credibility. Nobody has brought that out clearly. And to me, that is why across the divide, including the communication that we had from the High Court, it did not hold water. So, is it perception that is being driven there? Because I think as president and as a party leader, what he said, probably many people have accused him, you know what, you are acting as if you are not a stakeholder in this process. All right? After the ruling, many people were out in town clapping and said, NASA has won. And I think virtue of that, the president spoke. Now, those are two things that many people don't want to take into heart. That if the president was to sit down probably with his legal, not only legal advisors, but his key campaign strategists, they would actually tell him, Mr. President, don't make a lot of noise on this, because in this ruling, and Wakili, you'll agree with me, you have won. Because if I look at the judgment, he was vindicated that he had nothing to do with Al Ghurair.
Actually, that is number one. I was in court. That was not the case.
No,
he wasn't vindicated.
In sense that the prayers that were brought by NASA, the prayers that were brought by NASA, were they not thrown out with the same contempt that they came out?
What the judge said, Gabriel, is that they did not provide sufficient.
Exactly.
Yes. But it doesn't mean that there was no relationship. It's just that you used newspaper cuttings to prove your case. So we cannot rely on
my good friend. So if my good friend. What else? What else were we expecting? When you don't have evidence, what is it? You are led free. That's sufficient evidence. The other thing is that they acted, they had under dealings, and this procurement was flawed.
Yes.
Again, that was thrown out. So, question is, who's win here? Just because it's a technicality?
Look, Ken, we've been in this country for some time. When you see President Uhuru react in a particular way, particularly the way he reacted yesterday, the word vindication does not seem to fit into that description. Here's the point. You know, there's no problem the president meeting business leaders or for that matter heads of states. This is entirely diplomatic. So I personally have no problem that he met those people.
And he was the head of delegation of the Dubai Chambers of Commerce.
Yes, I have absolutely no problem with that. But these people are not mad to just suggest that you know, there's something below the carpet here. These people must be having some level of...
But they couldn't prove it in court.
I mean, it's very difficult to prove such kind of things because elections is basically a question of confidence. Once there's perception that this gentleman could be having some relationship, and then this guy has the monopoly of printing ballot papers that are going to be used in the presidential, where the president is a party, think twice.
Yes.
Dealing with the UN,
on the value,
yes, on the face value, think twice. Remember, Al Ghurair does not have monopoly of capacity to print ballot papers throughout the world. And dealing with the UN of itself cannot be a reason to legitimize Al Ghurair's capacity. Remember, the UN has a history of interacting with institutions that are not necessarily as transparent as people will want us to believe. So here is the point, the bottom line. Forget about the president, forget about Raila, forget about all these other parties. The bottom line is that we have an election in the next 29 or so days, and we need to be confident that we are going into this election in a very transparent and honest way.
Okay.
And if there's one party that probably is trying to confuse this, and the best thing is to engage the way they're engaged today and go for a neutral party or set parameters for Al Ghurair.
And let them deal with it.
Yes, just set parameters.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully
they're going to do that.
We're taking a short, but when we come back, we'll not talk about this. So if you want to have a final word in terms of this.
You see, if you can't prove it, it's speculation.
If you can prove it, it's speculation.
If you can prove it, table the evidence. So the problem we have is we have speculated for far, far too long. And I believe, you see, IEBC may actually mean well. We started by talking about the law and following the law. And one thing I like about, you know, I've actually liked NASA when it comes to getting judgment from the court. They are very happy. But they are the same people saying that if we lose an election, we will not.
Okay.
I told you, it's a catch-22.
Let's do next.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We take a short break right now. When we come back, we still have a lot to discuss. In fact, we will major on the announcement or the pronouncement by the president yesterday in Baringo, touching the court and the confidence of the judiciary. I'll be house. So an announcement that government will be that post-mortem exercise to find out what actually killed Nkaissery. So that's just in. Also, a story we're following up, and Dan Mule will be speaking to us, I think, from the Lee Funeral Home later on. But first, we take a short break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to NTV Today. My name is Ken Mijungu, in studio with Dr. Eric Komolo and Gabriel Mutuma, and we are discussing today two very pertinent issues. First, going down this afternoon, the stakeholder meeting between the IEBC and the presidential candidates, and it's an open forum where even the media is invited. Andrew Cheng will be reporting from the Hilton Hotel, the venue of that meeting. Later on, we are also following up the fact that President Uhuru Kenyatta made pronouncements that are now deemed as a huge concern to the country, sort of seen as directing the judiciary. Others see it as intimidating the judiciary, and that's where to begin. Remember, also in this hour, we'll be speaking to Brenda Wanga, who is at the Williamson House, that's ASRC headquarters. She'll be telling us about the new salary structures for public service. We are following that story for you. But first, let's talk about the president's remarks. And I think we have it. Let's play it first.
The president and his deputy expressed concern with the court's cancellation of the printing of presidential ballot papers, while warning that such delay tactics by the opposition will not work, and neither will the election be postponed under any circumstance.
I am telling the nation, every single individual in Kenya, including the judges, including the IEBC and the opposition, there is nobody who has not been aware that the election shall be on the 8th of August 2017. And I am saying, Kenyans are ready for that date. You change and mess with that date, we will not accept you denying the people of Kenya their constitutional right to elect their leaders. Mambo ya nusu mkate hakuna. Mambo ya nusu mkate hakuna. We will not accept the kind of games we are seeing being played by the people who are not ready for elections on the 8th of August.
Here, the duo that is seeking re-election into the most powerful office in the country picked issues with IEBC.
Sisi tunaambia IEBC, the IEBC sio commission ya Raila, sio commission ya NASA. Tunataka kuambia wangwana wa IEBC ya kwamba wasicheze karata mbaya na mambo ya uchaguzi. We are not going to entertain any monkey business between the IEBC and our competitors. And I want to tell Chebukati, Naule.
Right, in a nutshell, you have listened to this from yesterday evening, and that happened in Baringo. Yes. I don't need to ask a question.
Look, you know at the core of it, I'm a lawyer and an advocate. And from time to time, I represent clients who trust all their disputes to be settled amicably in court. So at the core of it, outside politics, I'm very keen to have courts that are perceived to be impartial. You know, when you have somebody of the stature of the president making such remarks, particularly in a dispute where he is a direct stakeholder, then you begin to have some fear. So I think that much as the president might have been reacting directly to this particular case, I think there's need for some level of restraint when it comes to appearing to attack the judiciary wholesome. And so this is very unfortunate. I think that CJ responded in the most appropriate way. I think that a country thrives on the basis of rule of law and separation of powers. And separation of powers is not a theoretical concept. It simply means that when it comes to real decisions, when it comes to operational decisions, then and judicial decisions for this matter, then the judiciary must be independent and must be perceived to be independent. Now, look, you know this, the government comprises of these three arms. In theory, they should be equal. But in reality, the executive, which is headed by the president, is superior and most powerful and controlled state security agencies, including that then man the judiciary. So a statement of that caliber from the president is totally unwarranted, and I think needs to be condemned in the strongest terms possible.
Can we dismiss it because it was made during a political rally? Can we
Not at all. That's even worse, because making it a political rally is basically, put differently, trying to incite. taking something public that is entirely judicial. I don't think that people go to court to postpone elections. I think that at the core of it, people are going to court to try to make it as fair as possible. And you know, trying to then portray image that disputes like this are designed to postpone elections, or for that matter, create environment for coalition government, is a very unfortunate, and I think certainly misleading.
Okay. Unfortunate and certainly misleading.
You know, since yesterday I've been trying to rack my mind onto the statements that were so taken out of context that the president said. And I can't find, I mean, listen, out of the statements that the president is making,
okay,
what has he said that is wrong? Number one, he is a president and we agree, and also the party leader for Jubilee. From what I'm hearing, he said he actually was directing to Maraga that do not allow your courts to be used or intimidated. All right? He was telling the same message to IEBC. Okay? The fact that actually we have chastised the president for far too long by telling him it's as if he's sitting on the fence, and he's acting like he's not a principal stakeholder in this process, was actually one thing. Now he's come out to say, kindly don't have your hands or your judges intimidated to warrant prayers that are not in line. With what they...
I'm told, Gabriel, I have to stop you, and I'll also ask you, is it what was said or how it was said? I'll stop you because we have to take this. It's urgent. And remember, this is a developing story following the death of the former cabinet secretary, Joseph Olen Kaiseri. And we just learned this morning that the government made an announcement that the chief government pathologist, Yohasen Oduor, will oversee the whole procedure. And I mentioned earlier that Dan Mule is at Lee Funeral Home, I think, where that announcement was made, and he now joins us live. Mule, good morning. And what do we know? And you promised that we'll get more information out of this, but what are you learning this morning about what is likely to happen going forward?
Thank you, Mijungu. Actually, the process has already started, and we are at the Lee Funeral Home, and the government pathologist Johansen Oduor is overseeing the procedure of the postmortem that started around like some 30 minutes ago. And also present are detectives from the Director of Criminal Investigations. But as journalists, we have not been allowed inside the compound. We are having to have a glimpse of what's happening through the fence, and also trying to talk to anyone who walks out of the place just to try to find out what is happening. And we managed to establish that around 30 minutes ago the process started. Also present, as I said, are the detectives from the Director of Criminal Investigations. The family members are also present, though we have seen, we have managed to identify 2 of his sons and 1 of his daughters leaving the place after maybe taking like some 25 minutes after the process started. And we've been informed that they are taking the samples first, then they'll be taking the samples to the government chemist, so that now the procedure will take place from there. But also we have also managed to see one of the lawyers who is representing the late Kaiseri there. We've also seen some of his bodyguards inside there, walking inside as part of the team that came in earlier to oversee what is going on inside there. Also, one of his doctors, and we've managed to see one of the doctors from Karen Hospital, whom they say was his doctor, also as part of the team that came inside. And also part of the team are the detectives from the Department of the Scene of Crime that had condoned off his home immediately after he passed on, as well as who had also condoned off the area around the Bomas of Kenya. Perhaps just to take you back a bit to what happened yesterday, we know that the DCI managed to question some of the people who spent the last day with him, some of the people whom he interacted with, and we understand that around 10 people were questioned, some of them his bodyguards whom are present here today, and also the waiters at the lounge he was in at Bomas of Kenya were also questioned. You don't be surprised when you hear some noises, vehicles moving. We're just on the roadside, so that's why. So some of the time the noise goes quite high. And also they managed to preview the CCTV footage from the lounge at the Bomas of Kenya. That was yesterday, in trying to find out exactly what happened, because they have said they're going to zero in to the hours between 4 p.m. on Friday night and 1 a.m. on Saturday morning, just to find out what happened, what exactly happened during that period. So anyone who interacted with him, anyone who talked to him during that time is targeted to be questioned about what happened. And then we'll be expected to get some updates, because there has been a lot of speculations about what happened due to the public interest in this particular issue. And yesterday we had spokespersons who were nominated, who were appointed by the family and also by the government, whereby we have a spokesperson will be representing the family, a spokesperson will be representing the government committee, and also a spokesperson will be representing the committee at his hometown in Kajiado and Ilbisil home. So we'll be expecting to get updates from them, official communication, so that we might be able to communicate exactly what is happening. Because we remember yesterday, during the prayer meeting that happened in his current home, some of those who spoke, including one of his cousins, Moses Olemarima, who was also a member of parliament some years back, said that they really want to understand exactly what happened, and they've been pushing the government to do a speedy investigation so that they may be able to know exactly what happened. And they are saying they want nothing but the truth, because they raised a lot of questions about exactly what happened, saying that they need to know exactly what happened, and also for the public to really know what happened, because they were saying that it has been happening. People have been losing their lives, then they don't get to get the reports from the government even after the autopsy is done. So they were saying they don't want Nkaiseri's case to be like any other of the cases. And they even mentioned the former Minister for Security, George Saitoti, saying that in his case they never got to get the information first as a family and also as a Maasai community. They're still having so many questions about what happened to Saitoti, and they want something to be done in a different way so that they may get the answers they are seeking. Was it a natural death? Was it natural death, or whether it was instigated in any way? They need to get to the bottom of that. So due to that, we're still following up, and any information we'll be getting, we'll be giving it to you. Ken.
All right, Dan Mule, thank you very much. And you're still at leave, so we're looking forward to your report. The other story we're following up is from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, which is set to announce, actually they're in the process, the new salary structures for state officers. The new salary is anchored on the job evaluation carried out by the Commission in 2012. NTV's Brenda Wanga will be reporting live later on, but first let's listen in.
Benefits for state officers. The Commission is this morning announcing the reviewed salary structure for the period 2017-2022. This is in line with the established 4-year cycle established by SRC, and in readiness for implementation when the newly elected state officers are sworn into office after the general elections of 8th August 2017, or wherever it will be. For purposes of clarity, it will be prudent to first of all clarify that state officer, as defined by the Constitution in Article 260, means a person holding a state office. For clarity again, this is well aligned in Article 260 of the Constitution, which you can make reference to, but they include the President, the Deputy President, Speaker, Governor, Senator, MP, MCAs, among many others. In other words, this statement does not cover the public officers, and I am sure you are aware that we dealt with the public officers shortly or a while ago. In the determination of 2017-2022 remuneration and benefits, the Commission conducted salary survey in selected countries of comparable GDP levels. The survey focused on the principles that are commonly used to determine the remuneration and the benefits structures. Further, the need to reduce disparities in the remuneration levels, both vertically and horizontally, was also taken into consideration. The Commission also considered various policy issues and principles, including the constitutional principles set out under Article 235. Some of these principles include objectivity and impartiality, equity and fairness, competitiveness, affordability and sustainability, adequacy, legal compliance, transparency, and public participation, among others. The last 4 years has been a period of critical evaluation of state officers' jobs and their remuneration provisions, and whether they are aligned to the country's broader objectives. The Commission felt it was important to scrutinize if the current remuneration structure is properly aligned to the objectives of the Constitution, and particularly if it facilitates transparency, accountability, and efficient governance. Determine whether state officers' remuneration levels and practices are in line with remuneration practices globally. Identify loopholes that have allowed misuse of allowances and benefits and allocation of illegal allowances and benefits. The remuneration structure conform to permissible fixed contract terms of service. Most notably, the review of state officers' remuneration is aimed at promoting the constitutional spirit of competitive, transparent, and sustainable remuneration that will lead to good governance, address corruption, and misuse of benefits and allowances as far as remuneration is concerned. The recommended and indeed approved remuneration structure for state officers for the period 2017-2022 is anchored on the comprehensive job evaluation that was undertaken in 2013. This is because there was no significant change in the jobs since then to warrant any other job evaluation exercise. It also takes into account the performance of the economy and the cost of living in the country. Indeed, a key plank in the review of the salary structure is that of affordability, and of course ensuring relativity of the wage structure between the state officers and the other public service, or between the highest position within the public sector and the lowest. The Commission has not only engaged with various state organs, but also consulted widely with religious organizations, special interest groups, and members of the public on this matter, and in order to factor the aspirations and the hopes of Kenyans. In these engagements, Kenyans have told us in no uncertain terms that public office is a public trust. Public officers and employees must at all times be accountable to the people. Serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. Act with patriotism and justice, and lead a modest life. As a commission, our wish is to ensure there is equity, that there is fairness and harmony in remuneration and benefits. It is our intention to provide, through defensible grading and salary structure, that we create an industrial peace, hence a conducive work environment for public service. This will be a stepping stone for providing efficient and effective essential service to Wanjiku, and also facilitate the right environment for economic growth and development in this country. In this regard, the Commission has reviewed remuneration and benefits for state officers And some of the key features within this structure in the review include the following: the payment of a fixed salary structure guided by performance of the economy as opposed to the current, which had an element of annual increment within the 5-year of contract term. We have also reduced some of the allowances, again based on the factors that we have discussed. We have abolished some of them, critically looking at its usability and relevance in the employment of the state officers. And for that reason, the Commission has abolished some of the allowances. One of the other key features is zoning of transport by clustering them based on the distance of the serving legislative officers, the details of which are summarized in the respective circulars that we will issue and the executive gazette notice. But briefly, I'll go through some of the key considerations and the salaries that we have adopted for the state officers. For the state officers in the executive office of the national government, we have various categories which start from the President of the Republic of Kenya. The reviewed monthly gross remuneration package, you don't need to write, we will provide this information, will be Kenya shillings 1.443750, down from the current of the high 1.650 thousand. The Deputy President from this new revised position will be 1.227, 1.188, down from 1.402,500. The Cabinet Secretaries, Secretary to the Cabinet, AG, Chief of Defense, and the group that is banded within that group will be having a fixed salary. And as mentioned earlier, these are fixed salaries for the term period of service of 924,000 from the current 1056, 1,056,000. The principal secretaries and the group that sits within that band have a reviewed salary of 765,188 from the current up of 874,500. The commanders of the various forces within the Defense Force, the KDF, and the band group that fall within that group will be at 747,461 from the 854,241. And the details of those groups will be related or relayed to you immediately after this statement. Remuneration for the Senate and the National Assembly. The Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly will be drawing a monthly package and fixed for the term of service of 1.155000 from the current 1.320. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate and the National Assembly will have a reviewed remuneration of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The Leader of the Majority and the Senate, and both the majority and the minority, will be drawing a gross of 765,188 from 1,020,000. Member of the Senate and Member of Parliament, the National Assembly, will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 710,000. At the county government, the county governor will be drawing a gross of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The deputy governor will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 701,441. The Speaker of the County Assembly and the CECs at the county will be drawing 259,875 from the current 350,000. The member of the County Assembly, I'm sure a number of you are keen on this, not for any other reason, these are very important players in the leadership of the county government, will be drawing a gross of 144,375 from the current 165,000. We mentioned that SRC considered and abolished some of the benefits and reduced others. Some of the abolished benefits at the county government are the governor's allowance. This takes cognizance of the fact that the remuneration paid to the governor takes care of the full responsibility, and therefore there will be no other allowance attached to the position. And so also goes the deputy governor's allowance. We have also abolished the reimbursable mileage allowance. From the statement earlier, we did mention that we will be removing some of the allowances that have been prone to abuse and closing on some of them unexpected allowances and claims that may not have been justified. For that reason, we have removed reimbursable mileage allowance, and we will be sharing part of the structures that we have given to this group. We have also removed special responsibility allowance. This takes the consideration that every position has been compensated through remuneration. So there is absolutely no need for anything called special responsibility allowance. Some of the benefits and allowances that were abolished in the Senate and the National Assembly is special parliamentary allowance, reimbursable mileage allowance, sitting allowance for plenary sessions, and I think this was part of the bigger cry from the people and probably even from all of you as Kenyans, that there is absolutely no reason why both the Senate and the National Assembly members should earn a salary and at the same time draw sitting allowance for the plenary sessions. Otherwise, there will be many sitting and standing and walking allowances. So this is removed. We've also removed special responsibility allowance for the very same reason I stated earlier. For that reason, we removed the reimbursable mileage allowance, and we adopted what we were calling zoning of the various distances within the nation, both for the Senate, the national government, and for the county government as well. And we have 5 zones with various levels of kilometers or distance. Zone A is up to 375 kilometers, giving a return trip on a monthly basis of 750 kilometers. And that they will receive a monthly maximum transport allowance for that return trip. And note this, monthly, not weekly, of Kenya shillings 266,663. Up to kilometers 500, return journey of 1,000 on a monthly basis will receive monthly maximum transport allowance payable through the payroll of 355,550. Up to 625 for Zone C and a return of 1,250 kilometers. Up to 438 Kenya shillings. Up to 750 return of 1,500 will be 533,323. And beyond that, that is 751 kilometers. We know Kenya is sparse and there are various kilometers to be covered, particularly by our elective members. So 751 and above will be drawing a maximum of 738,833. This removes all claimable mileages. And we all know that there were claims even up to Kenya shillings 2 million per month. And this in itself takes care of any of those abuses. For the members of County Assembly, again, we have fixed rates on a monthly basis. Up to 45 kilometers, return of 90 will be 22,133. Up to 100, return of 200 will be 49,183 shillings. Up to 200, return of 400 will be 98,367. 201 and beyond will claim 147,550. This applies to all our elected legislatures, both at the national, the Senate, and the county government. And we do away with anything called claims, the Friday claims. Out of all this, and with the prudent consideration that SRC factored as outlined in our background, we will draw a savings to this nation, and we are proud to announce that from the savings accruing from the new salary structure is a total of Kenya shillings 8,853,204,952 on the various items or the categories of the payment, and that is structured in a document that you will receive. That is basically giving the highlight of the reviewed remuneration structures and benefits for the state officers in the next 2017-2022. The ultimate goal of SRC is to bring wage bill, which currently stands at 52% of the domestic revenue, to sustainable levels of below 35%. This will go a long way in ensuring that the public sector wage bill is within the threshold provided for by the Public Finance Management Act. We all need to be accountable to the Kenyans, and as public servants, we cannot ignore the element of sacrifice as opposed to looking at employment as a source of enriching ourselves. We need to elevate the service. We need to elevate our sacrifice to the people and probably answer the question, what must I do to the people other than what will I get out of the service? we should strive towards being a producing country as opposed to being a consuming one. We are appealing to the employing agencies to also critically look at the numbers, because we all know that wage bill is a factor of two variables, the numbers and the values. And as SRC looks at the modest remuneration levels, we also need to critically look at the numbers so that we do not lose the benefits derived from the remuneration by employing more. The wage bill, as I have said, is a number of both the values and the numbers. The aim is to ensure we have optimum numbers in the public sector for efficient and effective service delivery. That is our aspiration as Kenyans. That is our prayer as SRC, and we will continue to work with all these agencies and the Kenyans to deliver our mandate. Thank you very much. I think that's loaded, and for information, this has already been printed and you can obtain your copies from, I want to believe, the Kenya printers, government printers. We already have a Kenya Gazette notice on the new salary structures, so that is already legally binding.
All right, very interesting times indeed, and very interesting indeed that I also have one person here who wants to be member of parliament. So that's the exact place to begin. From 720 to 621, no mileage claims. They are fixing it. At some point, they will not be reimbursing. You know, no sitting allowances. Do you still really want to be member of parliament before we talk even about the president?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think it's very clear what they have reviewed and what they have not reviewed. But it's very clear that some allowances have been abolished or reduced or restructured.
Are you in denial?
No, not at all, because I wasn't getting there because of the salary in the first place.
Okay, that's better.
I'm keen on being a member of parliament for totally different reasons. Unfortunately, this is not the forum for me to outline my specific agenda for Rangwe. But on the broader picture, it's important that salaries are reviewed periodically, and we look at productivity in the country, what the country can afford, and
I think she has some clarifications. Let's listen in.
In terms of the commanders and the KDF officials and any other that may not be falling within the elected positions, part of the statement that you will see in the Gazette notice is for those who are serving on a term longer than the 5-year period and who are probably within other terms other than what is specified in the current structure. They will run with their benefits to the end of the term, and anybody else new joining will join in the revised structure. Thanks, John. Yes.
My question is the new structure for the president. If the current president gets re-elected, does he reduce that? Is he subjected to this new pay or the current one that is actually serving at the moment? That's question number one. Question number two, the Judicial Service Commission as well as the Parliamentary Service Commission have contested this issue, these allowances, and can see already they have been gazetted. Last time they did not abide by the guidelines, so are we expecting them to abide this time around? Then thirdly, the traveling allowances have not been touched. I don't know whether you are talking about the traveling abroad or the parliament, which no one knows how much they are entitled.
Okay. I'll tackle in the order of your questions. You're talking of if the president is re-elected, which structure will he adopt? This will not only apply to the president. I am sure there are some of the senators and MPs and county government team that will be re-elected. We all know that they all are coming in on contract terms. and every contract is independent of. So whatever is ending in this parliament literally ends with the structure that is currently obtaining. So it will not be a continuation because it's a contract. And if you read our statement clearly, it is showing for the term of contract. So anything else that comes thereafter walks into a new contract by the people. That's why they go back to seek an election, a re-election. They're not seeking for a term of employment that's continuous. We did not touch traveling allowance. Anything that was not captured in this current Gazette notice, we have stated that. The earlier reviewed position stands, and we have also stated the same because it will be read alongside any other circulars that are still active for application. That covers both the JSC and the PSC. SRC's role is to set and to review. Anybody else doing the setting and reviewing apparently, of course, is doing an illegal job. And if you're drawing anything outside SRC, that is also not legal. So we have gazetted the position of both the remuneration and benefits for state officers. Anything else outside it, we may not be able to be the ones to deal with in terms of compliance, but I guess there are bodies that will be checking on that. Did you give your name? Yeah, it was necessary. Yes.
My name is Constant.
Sorry, Constant? Munda.
Yeah, a quick one. You said that you did a comparative study with the countries of comparative GDPs. Which countries were these?
Can we get another question? Yes.
My name is Oscar from Chata TV.
Oscar.
Yeah. Mine is about the distances that you mentioned and the amount of money that is supposed to be received by the senators and the MPs. So how are you going to determine that a particular member of parliament may have covered that distance to get that amount of money?
Okay. From Munda, we did mention that we did benchmarks. We never ever set a structure or a pay without conducting research and survey and benchmark as well. So we did within the region. We did the neighbors. We went outside the region, South Africa. We went globally, internationally. We picked quite a number of countries, India, Canada, US, and the relativity in terms of the GDP and the revenues. And that guided us in the determination. That is information that we also have as our reference and which we can provide the details. When you talk about the distance mentioned, our critical consideration was on the issue of claims, because it's more difficult to determine when an individual presents receipts for claims or something relating to that for accountability. So if you notice, what we have done is to remove anything called claims and simply put in mileage that is payable through payroll on a monthly basis. Granted, and we do agree, giving the benefit of doubt, that given the role of the national or the elected members of parliament, both Senate, county, and the national, they have one critical role of representation, and that calls for them to meet with their people. And obviously, in their day-to-day operations, it is literally driven by the representation. So the assumption here is they will definitely travel to meet their constituents. But of essence, we're talking of the issue of making subjective claims has been removed, and therefore the fixed amount that will be paid through the payroll even removes the disharmonized structures within the claims and giving everybody an equal measure in terms of the payment.
So does the assumption mean that it is based on the location, or rather where the constituency is?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The reason we've zoned is that is the realistic coverage within the nation, depending on where you are, and we have guided in terms of which areas covers within which kilometers, because that is provided, and all of us know the kilometers that are within the counties in the nation. This side.
Do MCAs get that one for commuting, or is it only the representative at the national level?
I think if you listened very carefully to my presentation, I covered both the national, the Senate, and the county. Okay.
My name is Brenda from NTV. You said you benchmarked, you can remember these new salaries, you visited different countries. Can you just tell us if there's a assertion that particularly Kenyan legislators add salaries that are way too high, even compared to more developed countries? Did this ring true in your research before you set up this?
I would say yes, absolutely. Relatively, they are high. And it's not just the legislative team. It's the totality of the public sector. If you talk about the cross-section of the civil service, the parastatals, the county government, the employees within the public sector, compared to our comparators, are way above or in the upper brackets of remuneration. So this is part of the address. We will definitely still remain a premier nation in terms of pay, but we are also encouraging, hopefully, that the productivity will go up, the revenues generated will go high. If we manage the wage bill, what is the effect of that? It means there will be more funds for purpose of development, and we hopefully reach the developing nations as captured in our data. I think that, can we have one more and then we can close this? Yes. Did I get your name? Mercy.
Yes. From
Kutoka?
Kwetu Radio. Naomba tafadhali uangazie tu kwa ufupi masuala ambayo yalipelekea kuangaziwa kupia kwa mishahara na marufuku ya hawa maafisa, kisha kuhusiana na mgomo wa wauguzi tafadhali, maanake mmesalia kimya na wauguzi wameshinda wakilalamika kwamba tume ya SRC ni mhusika mkubwa sana katika kutiwa saini kwa yale makubaliano.
Can I respond in English? Look, please come and help me with this. I need an interpreter. Tunaangazia kwa mshahara wa wafanyikazi wa Kenya, state officers to be precise, na tunataka kuambia Wakenya siku ya leo kwamba tumeset mshahara wa hao wafanyikazi kwa kuangazia uchumi ya Kenya, ubora kwa yale ambaye tulikuwa tumeangazia mbeleni, na tunafuraha kuambia kwamba tulisikiza mashauri ya wananchi wa Kenya kwamba mshahara ya watu wetu iko juu zaidi, na tumejaribu kuwapatia mshahara ambaye nchi yenyewe inaweza kuwalipa. Na tukiangazia kwa wale ulisema nani hawa? Wauguzi. That one I will speak in English. I think it's important for all of us to get it very clearly. For the nurses and the doctors, I think it's important for us to mention just something very briefly about the nurses and the doctors. And that will be the final question, by the way. And the lecturers. For the nurses and the doctors, it's of interest for all of us to know that SRC conducted a job evaluation for the entire public sector. This included the doctors, it included the nurses. Meaning at this point as we sit, we have established the relative worth of every of the public servant. That's very important to note. When there was strike for the doctors, there were quite a few offers here and there. That, and I think we need to mention again, was outside the determination or the advice of SRC. But as it were, it was necessary for the agencies, the employing agencies, to reach a point of agreement so that work cannot be disrupted. And you all know what happened, because there were a few offers to the doctors and to the nurses. And the agreement was that becomes a factor of the collective bargaining agreement when that time comes in drafting and crafting and therefore agreeing on the collective bargaining agreement. And as you all know, they went back to work. When it came to developing the collective bargaining agreement, we had given our framework, our guidelines as SRC. We give that advice on account of affordability and sustainability, a mandate that you Kenyans gave us. We provided that information because we knew the impact of any additional pay to any of the public sector employee outside the framework of SRC's advice. And that was supposed to have been factored in the collective bargaining agreement. But you're aware that after that was captured, and of course the nurses had already benefited from what was called at that point return to work formula. They're back again to the streets for more benefits. It's important for us to mention again that a team within the Council of Governors, a team that was appointed to review or to draw a collective bargaining agreement in terms of negotiations, sat and worked on a CBA. The process was that they link up with the employer or the person that funds so that they can factor the cost implication. Apparently that was not done. So they had a draft CBA with a financial implication that had not been factored within the budgeting process. And if you all remember, Council of Governors have denounced the CBA because they do not have funding for the same. SRC wrote to the Council of Governors seeking their input in terms of ability to pay. We are yet to receive that feedback. So as we are sitting now, we are waiting for the Council of Governors to confirm that they have 40 billion plus, or whatever the financial implication, so that they can pay the additional cost to the nurses. We have not received any response. SRC is not an employer. I think that needs to be clear also. SRC does not generate revenue. So we do not receive and open our wardrobes or the cabinets to check whether we have funding or not. We will give on the basis of what they have provided. At this point, if they have not, then we cannot give our approval. Thank you very much. You talked of lecturers. For lecturers, we advised, and we told them for as long as they can afford what they have proposed, they can go ahead and pay. So that has nothing to do with SRC. If they have the 10 billion, they can pay. If they do not have the 10 billion, then I think they discuss with the university. It has nothing to do with SRC. Thank you very much, and may the good Lord bless each one of you.
Right, the conclusion of the press conference by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission regarding the new salary structure for state officers, and it's quite some cutbacks on the salaries, and it looks as though everyone has received some cut, but in a nutshell, the governors and deputy governors' allowances have been cut off, the members of parliament mileages or claimable allowances have been cut off, and the sitting allowances, now you can claim. Basically what SRC has done with claimable allowances is that they factored into the salaries, and they have limited the amount that they can still pay in terms of salary. So we still have a discussion right here going on in terms of what the president said touching on the judiciary. We'll ask for some more time at the top of the hour to discuss it, but just on this that they have discussed, because we can't go back on that and assume this, with that point, it doesn't look more desirable now than before to be, for example, a member of parliament. But again, we understand that they have not totally cut them back, but they're basically just blocking avenues that people have been using to get the funds out, right? Before Gabriel can comment on this.
Yeah, I mean, SCRC is doing their job, and you know there has been a history of abusing power, particularly by parliament, to award themselves allowances. So I think it makes sense that they have set guidelines at this stage before the incoming group of members of parliament, where I suspect I will belong. Come in and then try to interfere with the whole thing. But the broader point is, if they have done it in a very consultative way, then I think it reflects the practical situation we are going to face. Having said that, I think that at the end of the day, there are unique responsibilities that, say, members of armed forces have, that certainly members of parliament and members of Senate have, that I think if they didn't consult, then will become an issue. And I'm very confident that they did the right thing by consulting in a broader way.
And Gabriel, you agree with me that the Parliamentary Service Commission, for example, initially there's a time they resisted this, and it's bound to happen. And this is specifically big in the members of parliament, because people view them as the people who draw a lot of money for doing very little. I must let me be conservative.
No, I don't want to say they do little. I mean, I've had friends who are members of parliament, have friends who are senators, and really sometimes it can be actually a very tough job. But that said, I think I'll go with what the professor said, that sometimes you have to ask, why are you getting that leadership position? Is it because of the salary, or is it because that you have burning desire to serve your people? So it really must be something logical to you know, gauged towards those two things. If you are there really for the money, then you're going to seriously, I mean, to you it's a dented, you know, career. If you are there for the fact that you want to serve people, then that's a different thing.
But it's also not.
But there's one thing that I like what
I really have to stop you. We'll continue with that discussion later. But I'm also informed, because Mombasa and Lamu, the curfew thing, it's very important. So I'm told that the commissioner the commissioner is speaking. Maro Nelson, Maro, let's listen in.
And agree on the way forward. We also thought it is necessary to inform our officers of the new appointment made by His Excellency the President of the acting CS Interior, so that communication is properly harmonized right from top to bottom. So we thought those are critical areas that we didn't want contradictions. And as His Excellency the President made it very clear that there will be no gap, and there is no going to be any gap in security docket. So we wanted to make sure that that is communicated down to the level of the officers at the grassroots. We also want to appreciate media for accepting to come within a short notice so that we can share this with you. We would also want to share with you the ongoing operation in Boni and the current curfew which has been imposed on some areas in Tana River and in Lamu. This is meant to ensure that security officers perform their duties effectively, secure members of the public who are innocent effectively. We without endangering the lives of the members of the public. We would like to ask leaders, wherever they may be, we know this is a political campaign period, not to politicize the issue. We should not involve politics in this. We should not read mischief in this. It is done in good faith. The essence, the object of which is to secure Kenyans in that region. Those Muslim brothers and sisters who will be going to worship will be allowed to do that, and the security officers have been asked to ensure that that is done, but the cafe will be in place. And we are asking the leaders in that region whom we have spoken to, and the leaders who are looking for votes in that region, not to create propaganda out of it. Serious operation has started, as I indicated to you when we met here. And when we say serious operation in that forest, and we want to assure residents of Lamu and residents of Tana River and parts of Northeastern, because I've discussed this also with my colleague, Ambassador Saleh, that the government is going to do all it takes, and I may repeat this, the government is going to do all it takes to ensure that Boni belongs to Kenyans, that Boni is sterilized. Security agencies will sterilize Boni Forest. Boni Forest is in Kenya, and the Al-Shabaab must know this, and we are going to do all it takes to secure that forest and secure Kenyans. So we are asking communities living around that forest, as you have seen in the TV, I'm happy, NTV, you've covered that. The government is moving residents who are living around the forest to specific areas, designated areas, because there is going to be terrible operation there, and we don't want human casualties. And these centers, they will be taken care of, they will be given everything, they will be secured. And this is the request that we are making to those people living around the forest, Boni. We have also made a similar request to the communities, because we understand some of them are harboring, are aiding these criminals. You wonder how criminals would bypass a community and go and attack. So we have requested these communities not to indulge in criminal activities. They should share information with government security officers, because it is for the common good for all in Lamu. The curfew does not involve the entire Lamu, it's specific areas which are affected. So we shouldn't read too much mischief out of it. Yeah, it's done in good faith. It's done in order to secure residents of that area. And no matter what you say, operation will go on. That is the position. No matter what they say out there, Al-Shabaab will be flushed out of that forest. As I speak to you, airstrikes are ongoing. We must secure Boni Forest. And from here, from tomorrow, our bases will be in Lamu. You will see me in full military combat, leading the operation. And it's going to be terrible. So that is the position the government has taken, that that forest and the Lamu must be safe during this period and beyond. During this period and beyond. So folks, get us right on that. There are no questions about it. We're going to do that job perfectly well. That's about Boni Forest, Boni, security at Lamu, security at Tana River. And the government is asking support and cooperation from the leaders. See. We also want to urge, there are some individuals bent on causing disharmony among communities in the region. You have seen some leaflets, some leaflets being thrown in some areas in Likoni, wherever. These are political leaflets meant to cause conflict, despondency among Kenyans who are living in this region. And we are urging caution. We are urging caution for those who are responsible. And nobody is going to be above the law. We are not, this country will never go back to where it was 2007. That one I can confirm to you. If there is a leader, if there is anybody somewhere in this region hell-bent to cause chaos, to kill police officers like they did in Changamwe 2007, to harass non-Kenyans from the region, I'm sure that fellow will be dealt with according to the law. Already, those who are involved in the distribution of the leaflets have been arrested as we speak to you. Those who are responsible in spreading the hate leaflets in Likoni, I'm so thankful to the county commissioner, the security apparatus, the OSPD, those who have already arrested these individuals. And we have put our machineries in place. Anybody issuing threats to Kenyans, regardless of the position, this individual will be arrested on the spot. So those responsible have already been arrested. And we are hunting for 2 individuals who are creating disharmony, and they are warmongers. They are being used, their machineries on hire. One of them is called Rambo. Another one has nicknamed himself as Captain. I've asked security apparatus in that area in Nyali and Kisauni to ensure that by the turn of the day, these 2 individuals are arrested. These 2 individuals, I can...
Coast Coordinator there, Nelson Maro, speaking about the security status of the wider coast region, especially Lamu, and that operation that is going on in Boni Forest, and he says it's on, and reiterating what was said by the acting interior CS. And of course, this is also a developing story out of Lamu. We don't have a lot of details. As Peter Mwangangi reported earlier, the information out of that area is very hard to come by because of the nature of the terrain of that area. So we'll try and talk to Peter Mwangangi later on after that press conference to tell us about what else was said. But today also is it's more than 50 years since independence, and Kenya is finally set to launch her first trade policy, and the launch is happening right now at the KICC. Alex Mwangi will be speaking to us later on, but let's just listen briefly as the CS is speaking. That is Henry Rotich.
Economy, and I find it to be quite timely and appropriate for this event. Finally, I thank the development partners, especially the Department of International Development, DFID, and the Trademark East Africa for supporting the trade agenda in the country. With these remarks, it's now my pleasure to declare this National Trade Week officially open and wish you a fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we will have an unveiling in just a short while. Just before we do that, though, it's time to take a look at the trade.
All right, Kenya launching the first trade policy, and we just caught the tail end of CS Rotich speaking, but don't worry, Alex Mwangi is at KICC. He'll be speaking to us. But right here in the studio, I still have Dr. Komolo and Gabriel speaking to us. We have taken some time off, but let's conclude on the discussion on the judiciary before I let them go. And going forward, I'll begin with Gabriel. Gabriel, we have heard everything that has been said. This is a concern, this is an expression, it's a direction to an independent agency of the government. All those things have been said, but ultimately it boils down to what happens going forward in the judiciary that restores this confidence or totally scatters
Well,
it?
if you follow what the president said, because I think that has been the bone of contention, the president said, and he put it this very clearly, it doesn't matter how many times we play this tape, you'll hear the message very clearly. And what he was saying is this: we are geared to holding an election on August 8th. That should not change. And Wakili has told us we have some, there are provisions of the law and technicalities that if they do happen, then that can be affected. But other than that, we must have an election. And really what I found, and when judiciary were issuing the statements that came into public participation, I expected Chapter 7 to come out. And that's actually what the president was alluding to. The courts will not decide how this election or when this election would take place. It's enshrined in our constitution, it's enshrined in our laws, and the people who will make that decision are the Kenyans. So that is the message that the president is saying. So the other thing that he's, even though he spun it, probably that's why people are not getting it, is he said that the judiciary and the IEBC must not allow themselves to be at the beck and call of the opposition or anybody else.
Is it about how it was said when the message is passed? But is it about how it was said or what was said?
Actually, we can try and look as if there's something wrong that was said, but if you look at the message, it comes out very clearly.
Okay. Do you agree, Wakili?
Look, Gabriel is trying to be very lenient on this.
It's not play the tips.
The point is, the president was speaking in context, and the context here is the decision that came out on Friday. And so, regardless of how you want to look at it, at the end of the day, President Kenyatta was responding to that particular judgment. Gabriel has also said that, the president said that judges should not
be used
and all that, and he said Maraga's courts and all that. Look, it's important to separate the person of the Chief Justice and his administrative role as head of the judiciary and what lawyers call decisional independence of the judges. The Chief Justice does not control what judges pronounce themselves on. The Chief Justice does not control how they handle cases, particularly once they have been allocated. In that case, of course, he will be interfering. So when the president appears to speak to the Chief Justice or speak to the IEBC for that matter, particularly the judiciary, then he's missing the point that the Chief Justice does not control decisions that come out of it. And therefore, it could be as well be taken to be intimidating the individual judges who then made these decisions. Having said that, this is the president of the country, and this is a crucial case. Nobody wants election-related cases to, particularly regarding the forthcoming elections, to drag in court. So it's always important that before such comments are made, particularly in a public rally, that there is consideration of the circumstances and what this might come out. If you make ordinary guy believe that the judges are not independent, or that somehow the judges are in some sort of working in some form of cahoots with the opposition for that matter, which is totally incorrect. Then you are basically exposing the country to some level of revolt against the judiciary, which is not a desirable position to be in.
All right, gentlemen, because of time, we will not be able to speak about it all, but I'll give you the final remarks on this. I'll ask a question. As you make your final remarks, just mirror into this, and then you make the final, and you're a candidate. As you mirror into the fact that the judiciary is being brought into the picture and the election has to happen. So in your view, will the election happen on the 8th as you close for us?
It's not about my view. It will happen. It must happen, because that is, you see, when you talk about our constitution, when you talk about the key stakeholders, and when you're talking about public participation, do you know, by the way, I don't know any other public participation that is done other than voting. That is the biggest and the best public participation. So when you're talking about a date other than August 8th, you are talking about disenfranchising the people who are actually waking alive to that particular date. Now, where I don't want us to get lost, Wakili, and this is what I think needs to come out very clear, I agree. You are saying that we must look at the words that are coming out. And that's why I said, if Maraga was to be given another chance, he would not have uttered what he uttered in Mombasa, because justified by those statements, that's where so many people started reading. In fact, it's not only me, it's not even Jubilee and NASA, both actually actually shared the same sentiments, that he was alluding to the fact that the printing of the ballot papers should stop.
Okay.
That is what many people got it. And probably, you know, we can play around with the words, but that is what many people, it's not right, it may not have been right, but some judges would actually take as if my boss has issued a direct order.
All right, in conclusion.
If a case is going on, and the subject matter of the case is being processed, ballot papers are being printed, and the case is going on, and you don't know the potential outcome, then the right thing and the most economical thing to do is to halt the process until the decision comes out. So I don't see Maraga's pronouncement out of context. What is important here is that the country needs to know that we as candidates are ready to participate in the election. In Rangwe, I'm very ready. I'm going to Rangwe tomorrow, and there are indications that I'm going to win this. So we really want, we really want this thing to happen on the 8th. But at the same time, we want it to be done in a manner that all candidates feel that have beaten them fair and square. So if there is anything that might manipulate the process and drag me in court after I win through petitions, then of course this should be avoided. Importantly, when it comes to presidential elections, we have a bad history of perceptions of manipulation. And it's in the interest of the country that IBC handles this in a very respectful way, in a very transparent way, so that we avoid such a scenario, because nobody wants this country to descend into some form of disarray from 9th of August.
Very true. Thank you very much, Dr. Komolo. All the best in Rangwe.
Thank you so
All
much.
the best in Rangwe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you thank you very much. Anytime. You should go campaign for him. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, we still have a lot to come in this hour. We promised all the business, sports, and entertainment. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, Dan Mange will be here with all the business. Stay with NTV Today.
Welcome to Business on this NTV Today Monday. My name is Dan Mwang, and we begin by taking you back to what was announced earlier on by the SRC chair lady Sarah Serem in regard to the different pay and allowances that are going to take place, rather come into effect once the 12th Parliament comes into play. That is after the election. And here is what she said to just set context to our conversation.
The President of the Republic of Kenya, the reviewed monthly gross remuneration package, you don't need to write, we will provide this information, will be Kenya shillings 1.443750, down from the current of the high 1.650 thousand. The Deputy President from this new revised position will be 1.227, 1.188, down from 1.402,500. The Cabinet Secretary to the Cabinet, AG, Chief of Defense, and the group that is banded within that group will be having a fixed salary. And as mentioned earlier, these are fixed salaries for the term period of service of 924,000 from the current 1056, 1,056,000. The principal secretaries and the group that sits within that band have a reviewed salary of 765,188 from the current up of 874,500. The commanders of the various forces within the Defense Force, the KDF, and the band group that fall within that group will be at 747,461 from the 854,241. And the details of those groups will be related or relayed to you immediately after this statement. Remuneration for the Senate and the National Assembly. The Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly will be drawing a monthly package and fixed for the term of service of 1.155000 from the current 1.320. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate and the National Assembly will have a reviewed remuneration of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The Leader of the Majority and the Senate, and both the majority and the minority, will be drawing a gross of 765,188 from 1,020,000. Member of the Senate and Member of Parliament, the National Assembly, will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 710,000. At the county government, the county governor will be drawing a gross of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The deputy governor will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 701,441. The Speaker of the County Assembly and the CECs at the county will be drawing 259,875 from the current 350,000. The member of the County Assembly, I'm sure a number of you are keen on this, not for any other reason, these are very important players in the leadership of the county government, will be drawing a gross of 144,375 from the current 165,000.
Now, something quite interesting, and we're going to take a look at some of the feedback we have on social media already. On our NTV handle at NTV Kenya, we already posted some of the new salary proposals that the SRC has put in place. And some of your feedback, we have Otieno Otuoma saying, Punda amechoka. Ama namna gani, my friends? Lakini cost of living pia iangaliwe Serem. MC wameonewa, that's according to Abi Mwenda. We have Jimmy Kinuthia saying that means Fred Matiang'i is the president according to salary 924 times 2, because the assumption is that he's on. This is an assumption that Matiang'i is getting 2 salaries, which is not the case in terms of full salaries. Then Ndunda says, for the sitting allowance, you have revolutionized the structure. Kudos. No unending meetings. And then someone asked about senators. Then we have Fred Asira saying the first thing MPs, as Sample may choose to call them, will do when they get to parliament, that's talking about the MPs, the members of parliament, is to pass a law allowing them to draw higher salaries, which is now a conversation that will be going forward about how the incoming parliament is going to handle this. Then Mrs. Serem, well done. That's Jimmy Wamai, who says, I salute you. Now sit pretty, take a heavy breath, and wait for a drama. How dare you pull and quote Ojamong on their parks? That's a view of Jimmy Wamai, his own view. And then Lillian says, this wage bill is still too high. We taxpayers are suffering. And we see the president had actually said that this wage bill has gone up significantly. Then Otieno Otuoma said this will ease the wage bill and somewhat allow government development bill to thrive. Now let governments now build infrastructure. Heko Serem. So we see a lot of positive feedback, at least for the SRC. But see someone like Okanga Josephat saying that still a lot, do something, guys. They only talk and a lot. Talk a lot. They don't work. We have Kevin Okyoga saying, why are you paying a billionaire who runs? That's not what we're going to read for now. We'll just move on, and some are just following the conversation. And these are some of the feedback, and we have a few more here of a different update that we had. Simon is saying, I usually wonder, MPs and MCAs have a salary paid for doing their work. Plenary allowances add up to a doubled salary. Nice move. Now, then we have Nation Njoroge saying it's a good thing to Kenyans, but let me just go back there. A lot needs to be done. I think I've lost it, but just go. Let me just get it. Yeah, so a lot needs to be done to reduce the higher wage bill. We've read that. And we say, Hamilton Ocheng saying, good move, and I hope they should be stopped from doing business with government as well. And we have Hamilton Ocheng again said, how nice if public wage bill can be reduced by 8 billion annually, SRC can do more. And so now that's some of the feedback on what has been announced this morning by the SRC. But what's also happening in Nairobi is that the trade week is opening, and we are having the CSs of Treasury rather, and as well as the Industrialization Ministry and the PSs launching where Alex Mwangi is. And we do have it's, like I said, it's a trade week in Kenya, and the trade in Kenya is expected to become much easier to coordinate after today's launch of the National Trade Policy. Now, Kenya has been operating in an environment of disjointed trade policy spread in various government strategy documents. This is according to the Industry, Trade and Cooperative CS, Aidan Mohammed, who says the lack of a harmonized document has been making coordination of trade matters difficult. Now, this 3-day event will host stakeholders and players in Kenya's trade industry to engage on how better to have trade add value to Kenya's economy. It will also provide insight on how Kenya's retail sector can operate sustainably with major players laden effects to corporate malpractices, debt and losses. Now, we take you live to the Kenyatta International Convention where the launch is happening.
Can I ask for photos?
What you're seeing is the launch of the Kenya trade policy, and this is a significant step in terms of trade, considering that there have been a lot of documents with different directives on how matters of trade would be handled in the country, making it a cumbersome process in some cases, and even as the country seeks to make the ease of doing business become an even better scenario. There we can see the cabinet secretaries of the National Treasury, that's Henry Rotich, alongside his Trade, Industry and Cooperatives counterpart, Eden Mohammed. We see Chris Kipto, who's the PS of Trade, who is also among those, and they are accompanied by the chair lady of the Kenya Manufacturers Association, that's Flora Mutahi, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that's KAM. And so this is a document that's expected to really make help the country make a lot of progress in regards to having trade and making it much easier. Because, you know, one of the things that many business persons have complained about is a lot of issues which have got some gray areas in terms of how they can actually implement and run their businesses successfully without much of a problem. And in not too long, Alex Mijungu shall be joining us to speak to us and just give us a brief of what was said, some of the highlights of the event. Consider the event. We have the CEO of the KEBS CEO, that is the KEBS CEO is there. Can see the PS for EAC as well. And so we expect Alex Mijungu to just come and speak to us with Chris Kipto, who, like I said earlier, is a trade PS, and he's been one who's been in keen conversations with, for instance, the retailers, that's the supermarkets, because one of the things that's happening right now is a lot of the supermarkets, rather the big supermarkets, are having a lot of challenges in regards to a lot of debt and a lot of problems with stocking and problems with their suppliers. And so he has been speaking to them, and he's like, they said this trade week is going to see them have a lot of focus on the same tomorrow. That's Tuesday. They shall be having a lot of focus on the retailers. And so we shall be seeing how that plays out as Alex Mijungu gets to speak to him in just a bit. But as we wait for that, President Uhuru Kenyatta has waived up to 1.5 billion shillings in loans owed to the Agricultural Finance Corporation, AFC, by farmers in the counties of Kajiado, Narok and Baringo. Samburu may also be a beneficiary of the same waiver. And now in a statement, State House says that the move is aimed at easing financial pressure on farmers in seeking to boost renewed investment in the agriculture sector. The loans were for wheat, sorghum and livestock farming, which were adversely affected by unfavorable weather, leading to losses which rendered the farmers unable to pay. AFC has been holding on to the farmers' title deeds as collateral for the loans, but the head of state has directed the National Treasury to work with AFC to have the deeds handed back to farmers. And prior to this, the president had already waived 2.7 billion shillings in farmers' debts in the past 3 months, with an additional 1.4 billion in support of struggling farmers in the country. Now, the financial sector regulators are ready to start merging in line with the Financial Services Authority Bill 2016, which Cabinet has already passed. This is according to the chairman of the Capital Markets Authority, James Ndegwa. Now, the proposed law provides for the merging of the Capital Markets Authority, the Insurance, Retirement Benefits and SACCOs regulators into one financial sector overseer, that is the Financial Services Authority, FSA. Much as the authorities have indicated that they are ready, keen attention will be on who gets to run the new body and if anyone will lose their job and influence if Parliament passes the bill as is. The state intends to use this move to provide a consolidated supervision for financial services to eliminate regulatory gaps and to increase protection of consumers of financial services. Ndegwa was speaking at the Insurance Regulatory Authority Gala dinner at the close of the International Insurance Convention, which they hosted.
The Cabinet this year approved the FSA bill, and therefore we, in due course, look forward to a merger of the financial sector regulators. But I think our presence here today can assure the industry we're already collaborating, we're working very well together, and we look forward to the same.
Now, Safaricom's mobile money agents will soon start using photos to identify those withdrawing or depositing money on M-Pesa, aimed at curbing the increasing fraud on the platform. The firm says it has distributed 25,000 pre-programmed smartphones to its mobile money agents to be used in registration of new SIM cards. The process involves capturing faces of SIM card owners and storing digital copies of the same for retrieval during M-Pesa transactions. Now, read the entire story on the Business Daily or log on to businessdailyafrica.com. Now, commercial banks have overtaken the World Bank Group's International Development Association as Kenya's biggest external creditor. This underlines the continued reliance on expensive commercial loans to bridge the budget deficit. Fresh data released by the Central Bank of Kenya shows the government owed foreign commercial banks 594.1 billion shillings at the end of March, a 65% jump from 360.2 billion shillings a year earlier. This is 89.4 billion more than IDA's 504.7 billion shillings, which represents an increase of 6.5% year-on-year from 473.8 billion shillings. And this as well is in your Business Daily. Let's now cross over to the Kenyatta International Convention Center, where the Trade Week has begun with the launch of the Kenya Trade Policy. And Alex Mwangi joins us live to give us some hints, some ideas of what has been happening as he gets to give us some of the sound bites rather of the Trade PS Chris Kipto. Alex.
Yes, Dan, we are live with you here at the KICC, where the National Trade Policy has just been launched. This is a document that will help Kenya be able to export more stuff, and the things that have been said here include the fact that Kenya's exports to Uganda, which is Kenya's largest export market, have been reducing in the last 5 years, while exports from Uganda to Kenya over the last 5 years have been increasing. This trade policy is one that is meant to help Kenya export more stuff, and we are right now looking for the Trade PS, Dr. Kipto, who is about to speak to us about this document. It's a document that is expected to increase Kenya's exports value, which have been suppressed in recent years. You will remember, Dan, that one of the sectors that is key towards creating jobs and providing jobs for Kenya's economy is in the manufacturing sector. We are now joined by Dr. Kipto, the Trade PS, who will tell us more about this document. Thank you for joining us. Tell us what this document is all about, the National Trade Policy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Today we have launched our National Trade Policy, and it is a document that we have, it has taken us over 15 years to at least finally agree. So for about 1 year, the whole of last year, we worked with county governments, because the reason why we are doing a new National Trade Policy is partly because Schedule 4 of the Constitution devolves functions of trade to counties, and we want to make sure that there is coherence, there is synergy in the activities of counties on matters relating to trade, together with the national government. So the work of the national government is to come up with a policy framework for the nation, so that both the national government and the county governments can work within that framework. So this policy is trying to make sure we also address current challenges that we have with declining exports, or not declining exports, but the pace at which exports are increasing is much lower than the pace at which imports are increasing, to the extent that right now our imports are 3 times more than our exports. And we are saying while we want to trade with other countries, we also want to make sure we push our exports. So one of the ways we have, one of the approaches that we have is to have a national export strategy. And today we have launched the initial preparatory work, the report of the initial preparatory work done by our State Department with other entities in government, where we have identified 8 sectors to focus on as part of diversifying our exports, because we have a narrow range of export products. Right now, about 60% is composed of 60% of what we export is around 8 to 10 products, which is quite low, quite narrow. We need to widen the base. So in this, we are focusing on more agricultural products, livestock products, fisheries. We have also leather products, textile, and all that others. Then also markets. Our markets are narrow. 70% of our markets, of the export that we sold, went to 12 countries only. So you can see we have over 193 countries that are nations that are independent, and which we want to trade, but we are only concentrating on 12. So the whole purpose of this policy is also see ways to widen our market sphere. So in AGOA, in EU, we are also working out on Continental Free Trade Area, Tripartite Free Trade Area, COMESA, EAC. There is so much we're going to work on.
And one of the issues that is pertinent nationally right now is the retail sector. We have the question with regard to Nakumatt and Uchumi, companies which are Kenyan entities that are well known, but currently they are struggling with their businesses. What is it that, or how is it that this policy is going to help them?
This policy recognizes that the retail sector is important to our economy. It's a sector that has contributed about 8% of GDP, and at one time the whole trade sector was doing up to 12%. But in the recent past we have had challenges, and we want to address those challenges in order to save our brands. Uchumi is our brand, Nakumatt is our brand, and is already gone into the region. But of late it has had challenges. So I constituted a task force composed of suppliers, the retailers, to work on looking at prompt payments, specific issues on how we can make sure we address those issues. So today we have launched the study, and on tomorrow morning, the whole of tomorrow morning, we're going to discuss right in this hall that report. And what has come out from here is that we need a code of practice, a joint code of practice to be signed by the suppliers and the retailers for self-regulation. What has happened is self-regulation is weaker. But more than that, we need to give force of law to the self-regulation. So we are coming up with a new regulator. And that is something that this policy is trying to address.
And last question, yes. We have the figure that we have 48 billion shillings that is owed to the suppliers. What is the government doing to compel those who owe money to suppliers to pay them?
This is exactly what we are doing. First of all, I have been holding meetings with Nakumatt and with Uchumi separately to try to see how to help them. For Uchumi, we have supported as a government because we felt we have a stake in it. But for Nakumatt, we don't have any stake in it. But as PS for Trade, I'm interested in ensuring that a Nakumatt brand does not affect the rest. So we've worked to see how, if they can have a restructuring plan that does not necessarily require government to put money in. So discussions are ongoing on. But from where we sit, we cannot have Uchumi yesterday having challenges, then they come to us. Today, Nakumatt is asking also for our support. It creates a moral hazard. So to avoid that moral hazard, we are coming up with regulations to make sure that this sector is properly regulated, that if you do an agreement, you must agree. If they are perishable products like milk or vegetables, for instance, which have a shelf life of 7 days, why should you take 90 days to pay? It doesn't make sense. And then you delay this, and the SMEs have borrowed. Those who have produced have borrowed money. They have statutory taxes to pay as you earn, the VAT, and even excise duty. So we are saying this policy is going to address all those issues. Even if you delay, you will be punished. And there will be an interest component, not just like the market rate. There must be a punitive interest rate. So there are many other things in that policy, in the report that we are going to discuss tomorrow. And I encourage Kenyans to join us. Come and listen. If you have issues on this, please come and we will discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kipto. That was Dr. Kipto, the PS for Trade, telling us more about the retail sector and what it is that the government is doing to strengthen the retail sector that has in recent months had a difficult time, given that some of the well-known retailers are struggling. I now hand you back to... Well, I'm now joined by Dr. Aidan Mohamed, the CS for Industry, Trade and Environment. And he'll tell us more about the national trade policy, but more so also about what his ministry is doing to boost and strengthen the retail trade sector. Thank you very much for joining us, CS. What is it that your ministry is doing to address the challenge of the retail sector, given the Nakumatt's and Uchumi's woes?
Well, you see, one of the things that we want to make sure happens in this country is that the private sector thrives and the private sector does its business. Our role as government is to make sure that we do not interfere. We create the necessary environment for businesses to thrive and to do their business. Now, specific incidents like the Nakumatts, the Uchumis, and others that you're talking about are challenges businesses face for different reasons, over expansion, over borrowing, specific issues that relates to potentially around management and others. And so I do not intend to discuss specific company issues because each case is different. But broadly speaking, the role that we want to play as government is to make sure that we support private sector growth. And we have seen significant amount of growth. That is why our GDP has grown by 5.8% compared to the African average of 1.5%. We continue to attract investments. That's why we've had more than 1,500 new investments in the last 4 years, investing on an annual basis close to $2 billion, creating the necessary jobs. We've been able to create about 800,000 jobs on average every year in this economy. And so these are all things that are happening. We are making good progress. What we are launching here today is the national trade policy. Trade is a critical component of any economy's growth. And one of the things that we have put a lot of focus on for the most part of the last 4 years has been to build the productive sector, the manufacturing, the services, building the infrastructure, the foundation that would enable companies to manufacture, to produce. Once that happens, they have to sell it somewhere. And so this trade policy that is now making it possible for Kenyans to have a one consolidated,
maybe just wind up. Yes.
To have one consolidated place is something that we're here to launch, and Kenyans will be able to get information that they have been lacking, that has so far been spread across all the different government agencies into one place, and to deal with the policies that will help them grow into the future.
Thank you very much. That was the CS for Trade Industry and for Industry and Trade, Aidan Mohamed, who was telling us more about what the government is doing to intervene in the scenario of the retail trade here at the launch of the National Trade Policy. And now take you back to Dan in studio.
Thank you very much, Alex Mwangi. Like he said, is coming to us from Kenyatta International Convention Center, where we've gotten some good insights in terms of the retail sector, aside from the national trade policy having been launched by the retail sector, which at the moment, as many of us should know, is that we've got challenges with the largest player, that's Nakumatt, as well as Uchumi, which has the benefit of having government ownership within it, so it's actually gotten some bailout monies. And we know there's an investor who's coming into Uchumi, but the investor has been waiting for the government to commit to a certain level in terms of what they have actually promised to give, that the investor would not come in, then find that the government may not fulfill its promise, then find themselves in a bit of a rut, in a tough situation. And we were told that last week Cabinet approved this, so possibly even from this week we may be getting an announcement on who the investor is and what the amount of investment is, if they choose to make that known. And then we shall see what the future rather holds for Uchumi. And for Nakumatt, on the other hand, we've had the PS saying that they've been pushing for restructuring of the management and the leadership, which might point to there being issues within the management and leadership, or their current composition of the same, or the structures may be a contributor to the issues that the company is facing. And we know that if Nakumatt was to go through a lot of challenges, as it goes through many challenges, there is thousands of lives, thousands of families that have been put at risk. And like has been said before, when issues like this are brought up by mismanagement, then the mismanagement is not just of a company, but of thousands of lives. So now we shall be giving you those stories later on in our bulletins as we put them together comprehensively. And for now, we hand you to entertainment with Usha Kandathil.
Right, Dan. So a lot happening in the entertainment scene. Unfortunately, we do start with some bad news, which is that Nelson Ellis of True Blood and Elementary fame has died at the age of 39. The actor passed away after complications with heart failure. He was a great talent, and his words and presence will forever be missed. That's what his manager said. Now, Ellis was born in Illinois and grew up there and in Alabama. He graduated from Juilliard and began his on-screen acting career in the early 90s. His big break came in 2008 when he made his debut as Lafayette Reynolds, the beloved short order cook and medium on all HBO's True Blood. He played the character on all 7 seasons of the horror and drama series, which aired between 2008 and 2014. Ellis is most recently starred as reformed criminal Shinwell Johnson on CBS's Elementary. He will truly be missed.
Oh, fudge.
Like this. No, like this.
Excuse me. Who ordered the hamburger with age?
I ordered the hamburger deluxe.
In this restaurant, a hamburger deluxe come with french fries, lettuce, tomato, mayo, and eggs. Do anybody got a problem with that?
Yeah. I'm an American, and I got a say in who makes my food.
Well, baby, it's too late for that. Faggots been breeding your cows, raising your chickens, even brewing your beer long before I walk my sexy ass up in this motherfucker. Everything on your table got AIDS.
Right, welcome back to NTV Today. My name is Ken Mijungu and I have all the latest news happening all around you. And we begin with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, which has just released a new salary structure for state officers that could save taxpayers more than 8 billion shillings annually. The new structure has seen the abolishing of MPs' claimable mileage allowance and sitting allowance. It has also seen a reduction of salaries for President and his deputy and the members of Parliament. The new salary structure is anchored on the job evaluation carried out by the Commission in 2012.
The President of the Republic of Kenya, the reviewed monthly gross remuneration package, you don't need to write, we will provide this information, will be Kenya shillings 1.443750, down from the current of the high 1.650 thousand. The Deputy President from this new revised position will be 1.188, down from 1.402,500. The Cabinet Secretaries, Secretary to Cabinet, AG, Chief of Defense, and the group that's banded within that group will be having a fixed salary. And that's mentioned there, this a fixed salary is for the period of service of 924,000 from the current 1056, 1,056,000. The principal secretaries and the group that sits within that band have a reviewed salary of 765,188 from the current up of 874,500. The commanders of the various forces within the Defense Force, the KDF, and the band group that fall within that group will be at 747,461 from the 854,241. And the details of those groups will be related or relayed to you immediately after this statement. Remuneration for the Senate and the National Assembly. The Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly will be drawing a monthly package and fixed for the term of service of 1.155000 from the current 1.320. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate and the National Assembly will have a reviewed remuneration of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The leader of the majority and the Senate, and both the majority and the minority, will be drawing a gross of 765,188 from 1,020,000. Member of the Senate and Member of Parliament, the National Assembly, will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 710,000. At the county government, the county governor will be drawing a gross of 924,000 from the current 1,056,000. The deputy governor will be drawing a gross of 621,250 from the current 701,441. The Speaker of the County Assembly and the CECs at the county will be drawing 259,875 from the current 350,000. The member of the County Assembly, I'm sure a number of you are keen on this, not for any other reason, these are very important players in the leadership of the county government will be drawing a gross of 144,375 from the current 165,000.
Right, and as expected, the reviewed salaries are already creating a lot of heat. We'll be having an analysis on the figures a little bit later on, and Brenda Wanga will be reporting also extensively on the new figures. But it's not the only news making headlines this afternoon. We take you to the coast, where the regional coordinator Nelson Marwa now says the government has intensified operations to secure Boni Forest, that's in Lamu County, including airstrikes. Speaking after meeting security officials in Mombasa earlier today, Marwa said that some residents are being evacuated to safer areas. Marwa is asking local leaders not to politicize the matter. Peter Mwangangi covered the press conference and now joins us live from Mombasa. Peter, good afternoon, and tell us, what else did Marwa say about securing Lamu County? And you also told us earlier that indeed there is no curfew in Lamu Island. Tell us more.
Yes, indeed. From he's assuring, first of all, he was assuring residents that it's not the entire Lamu County that has been put on curfew. It is just some parts of Lamu County, excluding Lamu Island and Manda Island, which has actually the Manda Airport. But we have 16 areas which have been placed under curfew, not just in Lamu County, but also in Garissa County and neighboring Tana River County. And what he's been actually doing today is to ask residents and local leaders to own that security operation, which has been intensified, we believe, starting yesterday, as well as the curfew. And they are saying that leaders should not politicize that particular operation, because it's not done in bad faith. It's done for the betterment of the security of the region. And they are saying that the airstrikes will go on and that they will do all they can to ensure that that particular area is secure. The other thing he talked about is that they will be evacuating Kenyans who are in some of those affected areas, especially some of those areas which have been attacked, and they'll be taking them to safe areas as they continue with their operation. And apart from that, he also spoke about the concerns for Muslims. Of course, when you say that people should be indoors starting at 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., it's bound to affect some of their prayers. But he said that they would be making arrangements for Muslims to be conducting prayers, and that should not be a reason, or rather a cause for worry. But he also spoke about other issues generally covering the entire coast region in as far as security for political rallies are concerned. And we had some concerns from the governor of Mombasa, Hassan Joho, who had claimed that the leaders, the police had refused, or rather declined, to offer them security for some of their rallies. But Marwa is saying that they will be providing security to everybody who has a political rally. All they need to do is to inform the police and not just expect them to know that there's a political rally without being informed. These are some of the issues that he spoke about, including the issue of political leaflets which were being spread, especially here in Mombasa's Likoni area. And he's saying that anybody who is going to cause disharmony by spreading leaflets which appear to target a certain community or a certain group, they will be dealt with. And of course, people have been arrested. About 3 people have been arrested concerning that incident, and we'll be bringing you any other update in as far as security is concerned. Ken?
Well, thank you very much, Peter Mwangangi, reporting right there after the press conference hosted by the Coast Regional Coordinator, Nelson Marwa. Of course, this is a developing story with details changing every day. And of course, by the end of the day, probably Peter Mwangangi will have a different story for us. But let's move on now. NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga was last night discharged from Mombasa Hospital after suffering stomach pains, saying that he is healthy and is as fit as a fiddle, as Peter Mwangangi reports once again.
After spending close to 3 hours here at Mombasa Hospital, Raila Odinga walked out amid cheers from supporters and leaders who had come to check on him. His running mate Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, Governor Hassan Joho and other leaders were in tow. He dispelled fears about his condition.
That I'm in very good health and very good spirit. We were feeling a little bit uncomfortable earlier on when on the flight from Malindi to Mombasa. When we landed, I had some little pains in my tummy and I was feeling a little bit cold and feverish. So my colleagues decided that I needed to have a checkup. And that is how they brought me here. But otherwise, it's really nothing serious at all.
Earlier, Kalonzo Musyoka and a doctor at the facility had sought to calm fears that Raila was in critical condition.
On our preliminary clinical examination by myself and my colleague, Dr. Swale, we confirmed that he is stable. All his parameters are absolutely fine. And as we speak now, Honorable Odinga is in a very stable clinical state. However, we need to continue monitoring him, which is what we will be doing.
We, the co-principals, the Honorable Wetangula, the Honorable Mudavadi and myself, who are at the airport, and Jim Orengo, took the decision to bring him to hospital. Indeed, he had already a boarding pass, and we know this in itself can cause a lot of speculation. So we're all human, we can fall ill, and you have heard from the doctors. So I'm sure that this will be a good message to the country at this time.
Earlier on during the day, all had seemed well after NASA leaders crisscrossed Kilifi County, drumming up support for their coalition. Their final rally in Malindi ended a few minutes to 6 p.m, after which the leaders left aboard 2 helicopters to Moi International Airport in Mombasa. It is here that they realized Raila was unwell and was taken to hospital for checkup. After he was discharged, his entourage left for the Moi International Airport, where he took a flight to Nairobi.
Right, that's good news for the NASA supporters indeed. And Raila Odinga will be attending a forum right here at the Hilton, where the IBC is meeting stakeholders and they're talking about the ballot procurement for presidential candidates. Moving on, Mary Senate Jubilee candidate Mithika Linturi has urged Kenyans not to worry about the cancellation of the printing of the ballot papers by the court. Speaking at Antubetwe, the Igembe South legislator stated that according to the constitution, which is the supreme law governing the country, the election which is set to be conducted on 8th of August this year cannot be postponed or cancelled. Linturi urged the residents to keep calm and focus on the day of election for them to cast votes for their desired leaders.
Kwa hivyo ningeomba the options available in the law siangaliwe mara moja na haraka iwezekanavyo, ili shughuli yetu ya kupiga kura isiweze kututatishwa. Na najua katiba vile inavyosema kura ama tarehe ya kupiga kura tarehe 8 haiwezi kubadilika. Kwa hivyo wananchi, tungetaka tuwe watulivu na tujue ya kwamba kazi yetu ni kupiga kura tarehe 8 na sina wasiwasi, najua kura tutaweza kupiga.
And let's also talk about a developing story here, the death of Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Ole Nkaissery. Now, Jubilee leaders from Kiambu County have called for speedy investigations into the death of the Interior Cabinet Secretary and make the report public. Speaking at a church service in Thika, the leaders led by the incumbent Governor William Kabogo also urged Kenyans to maintain peace during this electioneering period as the best gift for the late Nkaissery.
Ni lazima pia ukweli utokee. Tungependa kusema ya kwamba baada ya kuaga kwake Nkaissery ni muhimu sana pia ukweli kutoka kwa vitengo vyote za wale wanafanya upelelezi, watuambie mambo yalikuwa vipi.
And once a soldier, always a soldier. The late retired Major General Joseph Nkaissery was known as a no-nonsense man. His conservative and straight-shooting approach to handling the security docket was sometimes controversial, but his firmness can be traced back to his military training days, admired by many and trusted to handle one of the most powerful ministries. How did Nkaissery turn around the Interior Ministry? NTV's Dennis Okari takes us through his journey.
Retired Major General Joseph Nkaissery took office as the Interior and Coordination of National Government Cabinet Secretary after he was sworn in on Boxing Day in 2014. He took over from Joseph Olelenku, who was fired on 2nd December 2014 after barely serving 20 months in the internal security docket. Olelenku became the casualty of the rising insecurity in the country. 64 people killed in 2 attacks in Mandera, and the Westgate massacre that saw 67 people dead was enough.
The smoke you are seeing from the building, terrorists setting some mattress on fire to distract our action.
There was a public outcry over the security lapses in the country linked to terror attacks, including the Kapedo incident, in which at least 19 police officers were killed. There was demand and pressure from politicians and the public to replace Olelenku with someone with the agility and security background to handle the most sensitive ministry in government.
I, Joseph Nkaissery, being appointed a cabinet secretary.
Retired Major General Joseph Nkaissery was a natural choice. Parliament was unanimous in vetting his name for the job.
It took longer than it should have to do the reorganization that we did in the security forces, because I think that was something that ultimately, once we did it and we got a new team and greater cooperation, amongst the security actors, that has resulted in us now seeing the kind of positive impact in terms of improved levels of security and our ability to deal with terrorism and other such issues.
His last assignment in the military before retiring was serving as a commandant of the Armed Forces Training College. He retired in December 2002 after 29 years of service. His first job after being elected into Parliament in 2007 was to serve as an Assistant Minister for Internal Security under the late George Saitoti in former President Mwai Kibaki's cabinet. His entree in 2014, when he took over the Security Ministry, which had suffered serious security breaches, was one thing: to repel terrorists.
I want to promise that I will not let Kenyans down.
That came with a raft of new security laws that were controversial. Joseph Nkaissery told Kenyans to expect major changes in the security sector, and in his first address after being sworn in, said he supported the amendments to the security laws, which were opposed by media owners, civil society groups and the Commission for Implementation of the Constitution. In his view, they were meant to fight crime and terrorism.
One thing I can assure you is that we are not infringed on the human right of citizens.
During his term as the Interior CS, security officials say he helped streamline security operations and instilling discipline with his conservative approach to operations. For political detractors, his message was always clear.
Mimi niko na tear gas ya kutosha. Na sija askari hajafanya training sana. Sasa I will appreciate tutatrain na nyinyi.
He was the first cabinet secretary to admit the presence of powerful cartels and brokers who interfered with issuance of tenders at his ministry in his first 90 days as the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Dennis Okari, NTV.
And we have some update from the Joint Organizing Committee on the late Major General retired Joseph Nkaissery's funeral arrangement. And this Joint Committee is made up of both government officials and the members of the family of the late General. And this is the update. There will be a memorial service on Thursday next week. That's on 13th of July at the Nairobi Baptist Church along Ngong Road. The service begins at 9:30 a.m. and is open to you, the members of the public, and you are advised if you want to attend, you be there by at least 8:30 a.m. Then the members of the late Nkaiseri's family have also confirmed that his burial will be conducted on Saturday, 15th July 2017. Actually, on 13th should be on a Wednesday because 15th is on a Saturday at his home in Basil, that is in Kajiado County. And finally, condolence books will be available from tomorrow at the Harambee House, KICC here in Nairobi, Nairobi Baptist Church, and all the 47 counties. And those who wish to pay their tribute to the late Cabinet Secretary may sign the condolence book at any of those venues. And of course, this is a developing story, and we have some information just in. Apart from the committee, we spoke earlier to Dan Mule, who is still at the Lee Funeral Home. Dan, good afternoon, and what is the latest from the Lee Funeral Home?
Yeah, thank you, Ken, and we don't have much updates from this side apart from what we just talked about from the spokespersons about the burial as well as the funeral service. We are still pitching tent outside the Lee Funeral Home, still waiting to get updates from one of the spokespersons and also the chairperson of one of the burial committees, who is the NTSA Director General Francis Major, who is inside there still following up with the proceedings. As I said earlier, the family members were here before the process started, because the process started at around 10:30 a.m., like 30 minutes later than scheduled, than expected, because the doctor to the late CS Joseph Nkaiseri arrived a bit late. But we understand that the process started at 10:30 a.m. and has been going on up to now. But the family members left around some 20 minutes after the process started, and I managed to identify 2 sons and 1 daughter to the late CS Joseph Nkaiseri, who left. But inside there, we still have detectives from the DCI office. We also have the lawyers, the government lawyer, as well as the family lawyer, and we also have representatives from the Ministry of Health who are also following up the process, because there is tight security and we have not been allowed to go inside because they are carrying it with a lot of secrecy, and we're only expecting to get some updates from either Johansen Odoro when they walk out, or from Francis Major, who is also one of the authorized spokesperson in this whole procedure. Remember yesterday, Ken, we had some people who are questioned about what is happening, and we understand that even today we have a number of people who have been lined up by the DCI office to be questioned and also to write their statements about the issues or the things that transpired between the afternoon of Friday evening to 1 a.m. Saturday morning, the events that occurred during that time, and also all the people who interacted with the late CS are also going to be questioned on that. So that's it for now. We'll be bringing more updates as we get them in our subsequent bulletins.
All right, thank you very much, Dan Mule, reporting from the Lee Funeral Home with all the updates regarding the preparations and the autopsy that is being conducted, the body of the late retired Major General Joseph Nkaiseri. Well, time now for sports, and Brian Otwal is right here in studio. Brian.
Well, thank you, Ken. We start with some updates on the IAAF World Under-18 Championship slated for Wednesday, where the government is this afternoon scheduled to officially hand over facilities to the IAAF ahead of the opening ceremony. That is for the games that will be held at the Kasarani Stadium. Meanwhile, over 70 more countries are expected in the country this afternoon as Team Kenya, which moved to the Athletes Village in Kenyatta University, intensified training with a day to go. Moving on, we go on to some football, and Manchester United arrived in Los Angeles, where they will begin their summer tour of pre-season matches. New signing Romelu Lukaku, who has been in Los Angeles for the past several weeks with United midfielder